Everyone, and welcome to the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for September 13th, 2022. Present with us, of course, we have Mayor Kurt Wilson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Michael Palermo, Councilmember Peter Vanstrom, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember William Morthland, and of course, City Attorney David Davidson, and Deputy City Administrator Michael Fisher. I'm Randy Knighton, and the purpose of committee meetings are for the city departments to convey information to the mayor and council and discuss initiatives listed on the published agenda, as well as provide updates of vital information essential to the operation of city government. By ordinance, the committee consists of the mayor and council and the city administrator, and the city administrator serves as chair of committee meetings. This is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. Therefore, while the meeting is open to the public, and we appreciate all members of the public who are present this evening, we do not take public comments or questions during committee meetings unless specifically authorized by mayor and council. Public comments or questions are received at the regular city council meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month, and the fifth Monday and open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms, and if you have any questions or need information, please feel free to contact our staff at any time, and we will provide that information to you. I would also encourage the viewing audience and residents present to visit the city website, and also, if you have an item of concern, you can report that on the city web service portal. I would also like to mention some upcoming meetings specific to a proposed bond, 3 questions totaling $180 million. And those information and education sessions will take place on September 20th at East Roswell Park, October 4th at Henry Park Community Room, October 18th at Bill Johnson Community Room, October 25th at the Adult Recreation Center, and October 26th at St. Andrew Catholic Church. We certainly encourage residents to seek information on the bond proposals, and the city will certainly provide that information for you. Before us, we have the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee agenda. Are there any changes or modifications to the agenda? Seeing none, we will ask for approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion of approval? Motion to approve by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Under administration, we have item number 2, consideration of a resolution to accept the FY 2022 Home Investment Partnership Program grant and budget amendment. Yes, I'm sorry, Councilmember Hills.
Forgive me, Mr. Knighton. I've had a request from several of our council members, and I agree, an ask to defer our number 4.
Okay.
Consideration of the MOU between the city and Roswell Arts Fund.
Okay, thank you very much. That item is duly noted as deferral. I assume there will be no objections from the committee. All right, seeing none, that item will be deferred. Thank you very much. All right, item number 2, consideration of a resolution to accept the FY 2022 Home Investment Partnership Program grant and budget amendment 2215000-09-26-22 to set up the grant. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. I appreciate that. This is a grant, the home grant that we receive periodically. Charles Alford is our grant specialist who handles this particular grant along with CBG, so I will turn it over to Mr. Alford for the specifics.
Thanks, Michael. This is a resolution to accept our 2022 home funds. That's a home investment partnership program grant. This comes from HUD in the amount of $117,000 07605. These funds can be used for affordable housing like rental or rehab or new construction. It can be used a little bit for rental assistance as well. We get the funds as part of our participation through the Georgia Urban County Consortium, which is led by Cobb County. We don't qualify as a city on it by itself to receive the funds. We're not big enough, so we joined the consortium. To be upfront with you guys, we've had issues spending these funds in the past few years. We used to give them a lot to the Housing Authority, Homestretch, and a few others. There's only a handful of organizations that can qualify that do housing within Roswell, and there's also a certain percentage set aside, 15%, that has to go to a community housing development organization, which is a special designation by HUD, which has to do with your board makeup and what your mission is and that kind of thing. So there's only a handful of people that can qualify for these. I met with Councilmember Hills a few months ago to discuss potentially releasing these funds and potentially doing away with our agreement. We have a 3-year agreement which will conclude at the end of next year with the GUC, which is led by Cobb County. However, with the stuff going on with the Housing Authority, I thought it might be good to accept these funds at this point in time, and we have until December 31st, 2023 to commit the funds, and December 31st, 2024 to spend the funds.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion from Mayor Wilson.
So I just have a question, actually.
All right.
So just to confirm, so if these funds are accepted, this is something where after the administration costs, et cetera, that is something where the city does have the authority to provide this to the Roswell Housing Authority?
Yes, we usually accept it, and then it's actually a pass-through. It doesn't actually hit our books. We're allowed to determine where the funds are spent as long as it's within the parameters of HUD's guidelines.
All right, thank you, perfect. Appreciate it.
Sorry,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
to Buttress Michael's point, the funds will go, we will direct the funds, they'll go to the Housing Authority, Homestretch, Drake House, some other organization like that, correct? Thank you, sir.
It's Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, and then just clarification, are there any strings or obligations attached that comes with this fund?
Specifically, there's not really any strings, because since we're not really we're administrating the funds, but we're not actually the ones that are using them. Just like any other grant, if our subrecipient, the Housing Authority, use these funds in some way, we could be held liable in that kind of way, but that's about it as far as the strings. The strings are on the recipient, so there's affordability periods when they, that apply depending on how much they spend for each unit and that kind of thing, but it doesn't apply to the city itself.
Any further questions? We did have a motion by Mayor Wilson. Do we have a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Hills. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 3 is presentation of Human Resources Communications Initiative. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you again, Mr. Knight, and I'll ask our HR team that will be handling this item to come up, and I want to say just a couple of things. First, our HR team introduced this topic to me a couple of months ago, and they've been working on a communication initiative, and it's something that they have deemed to be very important for HR to be able to engage with our employees. And after looking at the thought and the detail that they put into it and the organization of it, I really wanted to share this tonight with you all, let them share this tonight with you all, but specifically something that they're going to be working through, and I can just see this scope being moved over into other departments to be able to really help communicate internally between departments, not only just with our HR initiatives that are going on, but with other departments also. So it's a very exciting topic that we're going to be looking at, and I think a very thoughtful initiative that they've put together. And but before I turn it over, I would like to take just a moment, and I would like to introduce to you our newest member of our HR team, Ms. Linda Warren. Linda has just joined the city as our new HR director. We're very excited about that. Linda comes to us with experience as a HR director at another city and has been through the city of Atlanta organization at some levels, and then with Union City, and is here. So we're very excited and wanted everybody to have an opportunity to put a face with the name, and we're looking forward to her really getting into HR. And one of the big things that impressed, I think, all of us was her idea of employee engagement and bringing everybody, giving them that feeling of belonging at the city. So we're very excited to have Linda here. So thank you, Linda, for being here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristen and Mary Lynn to talk about the communication initiative.
Oh, good. Just to introduce myself this evening, my name is Mary Lynn Savell. I'm the payroll manager in HR here at the City of Roswell. I'm joined here by Kristen Sparrow. She's our benefits coordinator. Amy Thomas is over there. She's our HRIS manager. And of course, you just met Linda Warren, who's our brand new HR director, day 2. All right? Yeah. We're doing great, Linda, doing great. So we're very excited. I wanted to share something with you all tonight, and I'm glad to be here to be able to do that. We've been, like Michael said, thinking a lot and working pretty hard on this initiative, and I hope that you'll be excited about it too. My hope is that after you hear our presentation on this initiative, you'll have questions and feedback for us. And if you do, I hope that you will share that with us at the end of the presentation so that we can talk about it. I'd love to get that from you. Now, of course, in HR, we recognize that communications in an organization is extremely important, and we're very proud to be a part of that as HR professionals. And we also know that we can do more as a division to be better communicators with all of our employees. So employees that are working out in the field, employees that are sitting at a desk, employees that prefer email communication, employees that prefer to be face-to-face. And we have all of those here at the city. And because it is the city's vision to be the #1 family community in America, in HR, we can help to realize this vision by creating a multifaceted internal communications plan for all of our employees so that they have the information that they need, that they find useful, so that they can feel engaged in their work with the community. So that's what we're trying to do here. We've been working on this for the past couple of months, and we asked ourselves, what does a focused, targeted communications plan look like here at the City of Roswell? And we decided that we need 6 key components to be effective communicators here with all of our employees across all of our departments and all audience groups. So some of these components are brand new to us. Some of them we have already been using. We're just focusing our efforts a little bit more. So I want to tell you a little bit about those tonight. Our first point of approach is through our publications. Now, one of these publications is the HR newsletter. So this is a letter that HR puts together. We designed this, we wrote it, we write it every month, and it goes out to all staff. It includes information that's designed to educate our employees, to clarify information to our employees, and to celebrate employee milestones and achievements. And on any given month, employees would be able to look in the newsletter, find information about what's going on in the city, what they can be involved in, volunteer opportunities, hot topics in HR. And like you see here, we've got hot topics like payroll and benefits, and volunteerism and wellness. So we've really enjoyed having the newsletter. We've had it for about 4 years. So this is one that we're continuing to use. One that's new to us is a publication called The News You Can Use. So this is a bi-weekly publication. Kristen has discovered a talent for graphic design and writing, so she puts this out for us every 2 weeks. And the point of this is to have bite-sized information on an HR hot topic, something that can be viewed very easily in one window screen of Outlook, or it can be printed on one page and put in a break room or shared with employees by forwarding, whatever people think could be more easily digested for them. Our most recent News You Can Use issue, it featured important information about our PTO policy. and we were very surprised and delighted to have employees respond directly back to us. This comes from our HR email address. It's branded with our logo. They were able to respond directly back to us, which opened up a doorway of communication and allowed us to follow up with individuals and questions that they had. So that was a great opportunity there. The next point is for those employees who prefer more face-to-face. And we in HR, we know that this is very important now in a post-quarantine, post-COVID workplace. We want to be face-to-face with our employees now more than ever. So the first piece of this in-person approach are these HR in-person tours. We like to refer to these in the HR department as HR Traveling Roadshow. The idea being that we gather up all of our HR accoutrement, our laptops, our forms. We have lots of paper forms, and two of us head out to locations around the city, and we meet with our employees there face-to-face for about an hour at a time. So starting in June, we've already been to sanitation over at Hembry. We went to transportation in July. We've visited the Bill Johnson Community Center over in Rec Parks in August, and we also went to the Adult Rec Center. Our plan is to go back out soon to Rec and Parks, specifically to interact with our employees who speak only Vietnamese, or majority of Vietnamese. So we really enjoy being able to talk to our employees in person. We've had a great turnout, and we're able to get folks signed up for retirement benefits that they've never been enrolled in before. We are able to help them with HSA contributions, with their taxes, and benefits enrollment, and so on. The next piece of outreach we do is more traditional lecture style. We've already put on 2 of these geared towards open enrollment in the last 2 weeks, and we are planning to put on another one regarding the pension plan for those employees where it's applicable coming up soon, and also coming up later this fall, some changes to our retirement planning options. We're going to share that with folks. So this is more of a traditional lecture style with question and answer at the end. Now, when we started planning our communications initiative, you can see that we've bitten off a lot, and we realized that we're going to need help. So we asked our department heads if they could identify folks in each of their department who could be subject matter experts for us when it comes to communications, and they lovingly provided us with 9 communications liaisons. This is just fabulous. We've met with them once already, and we plan to meet with them quarterly, ongoing, at least through 2023. And we have one specifically, she's here today, Nancy Peterson. She's our IT-specific resource, so we always have that available to us as well. These are designed to be points of contact in the department that we can focus our attention to. They will help us to disseminate information appropriately to their different audience groups that we've worked on identifying together. And together we plan to build a documented internal communications plan that we can then use and share with you all and be able to have available to us when we need it. In addition to if you want to go ahead, one more. In addition to our internal communications plan, our liaisons have helped us to identify that we have some areas of opportunity when it comes to the onboarding and new hire experience. So together we have a strategic team of HR and some graduates from our leadership experience and development training program. So that's a couple of folks there. We've never paired with them before in HR. And we are working on evaluating our current onboarding and new hire process. We're going to build something that's cohesive, something that's organized, and something that's documented that all of our departments can then use to successfully onboard all of their new hires from before they start all the way through their intro period. So this is all very exciting, but how do we determine that we're going to be successful? How do we know that we've made a difference? That's why we built a measuring step into our six key components here. We're using surveys. We are meeting this week with our liaisons one-on-one to design a custom survey for each of their departments and audience groups to help us gather information about engagement. We've already mentioned that several times this evening. We are able to track clicks when it comes to the newsletter. We track attendance when it comes to our tours and lectures, and we plan to interview our new hires when we get that started up to be able to get some more insight into the new hire experience and how we can make that better. Now over here you can see we have a bar graph, which is just an example of the attendance that we've had so far for our HR Traveling Roadshow just this past summer. My hope because of this key component is that we would be able to come back to you all in 1 year and show you subjectively how we've improved our communications in all of these areas. And so finally, we are implementing a learning management software. We have one currently. This is going to be new to us. It's coming this fall. And it's going to allow us to create custom courses for our employees. That's going to be specifically for HR hot topics, in addition to other things as well. And it will also naturally play into the new hire onboarding experience that we're trying to redevelop, so that we can gain access to those employees 24/7. Our plan is to pilot it with our full-time fire captains, who are going to be 24-hour personnel. They would be able to log on here, find information, tutorials, documentation about specific HR processes and hot topics, like how to be a new manager, incident and accident reporting, things like that. One more. So to sum up, you can see we've put a lot of thought, we've put a lot of effort so far into this communications initiative. None of us are communications experts, but we know that it's very important, and we know what our employees need and want. I don't think any of us knew that we would be here when we started talking about this several months and weeks ago. It was just a couple of us having some ideas. What can we do better as HR to be more effective communicators? And now today we're here talking to a committee on this evening, and we have about 25 employees that we're collaborating with to this date, including community relations, and now Linda is on board with us to spearhead engagement. So we've come a long way, and we're going to make a lot of progress, I'm sure. So we're building interdepartmental relationships amongst our liaisons. We're sharing valuable information with you all and with all of our employees, and we're helping our employees to feel more engaged at work, so that we can be the #1 family community in America. Thank you so much. Questions, feedback, thoughts?
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you for that. Very exciting times. I love the cut and paste dummy pictures you have to show off to Ms. Ward, because I'm kidding. I know they're really employees. I just wanted to say that the Roswell at Work newsletter that you all produce has been awesome. I know you said 4 years. It's been rolling. We're only a handful of us are only 7 or 8 months in, but I print them and copy them so I can refer back like a yearbook, and get to know who's working where. We're all in closed door scenarios in this building, and it's really hard to be able to put faces and names together. So my hat's off to you for that on a personal level. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Or did you want to go next?
No,
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you, guys. And also the news you can use. I loved it right away. I noticed it when it came out, and that's a fabulous piece. Just love the online training library. I have a question. Are there incentives for employees as far as how many courses they take? Are there certain levels if you do 20 hours or 25 hours, anything like that?
That's always part of the conversation when it comes to these learning management software, things like Absorb, I think is the name that they're going with now. It's always hard to get employees engaged to use those. That's just an industry standard kind of thing. It's also difficult to have incentives like that when not all of your employees are on the same level when it comes to having access to the computer or access to a desk or access at home or on. So we have to be careful about how we do that, but yes, that is always part of the conversation. How can we get folks more engaged? I think currently they're getting a certificate that they can print out and show and put on their performance evaluation when it comes to meeting with their managers, things like that. That to me is just the bottom rung. We can do much better, yeah. It's always fun to think about, yes.
Yes, any further? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great job.
Thank you.
You have to be excited as a new HR director to know that you have a team of people that have independently and collectively worked on this. Without any particular leadership, they are the leadership that's just made this happen. It's very impressive. It really is. And I know y'all were very excited about coming here tonight. We're very excited that you came here. Thank you. It's very, very impressive. The presentation's awesome. There's so many good ideas in here. A couple questions just to think about. So one of the things that we're going to start doing is we'll be involved in zero-based budgeting. So a question that I would ask, just out of this, just to give you an example, kind of give a flavor of what zero-based budgeting looks like. So, for example, you'd say, okay, so you have Absorb as your vendor, your third-party vendor for LMS, learning management software, right? So one of the questions that you'll ask from an evaluation perspective is how long have you had them? What's the annual cost, the subscription cost, and how effective is it? Those probably, I'm just kind of doing this from a standpoint of starting, where's Ryan? There you go. Just to begin the process, because this is something that will fall into zero-based budgeting. And then out of that will come is what KPI is going to build out of that. In other words, you had, hey, is there an incentive program? Does it work? What kind of participation rates do we get? You know, is it a check? Is it a check the box, or is it something that's really making a difference? How much of it is Roswell specific? In most cases, LMSs aren't, right? It's just that here's our LMS, baby, take it or leave it, right? And so it's not individualized. So you want to know, hey, how does impact does this have in the transportation department, right? What kind of impact does it have in the Rex and Park department, et cetera? You want to see what's the impact. And this is the kind of things, Ryan, that we'll be asking from the directors and department heads. Hey, you're spending so much money on Absorb. How long's Absorb been there? How effective is it? What kind of participation rates, et cetera, et cetera. So this just gave me a good launching point. Sorry, just kind of to begin the conversation because it's September, what's the day, the 12th, the 13th. So ZBB is on its way. And this is kind of the thing that we'll be talking about. So since you're brand new, I thought I'd kind of throw this out here. Thanks for your ingenuity. Thanks for your initiative. Thanks for presenting us. Great stuff. And we're really proud to have you guys doing this. This is so cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
One thing you brought up earlier was the non-English speaking employees of the city. Do we have some kind of IT program that would be able to read this and translate it into a program for them?
This particular presentation.
Just anything that comes out through HR.
Now, I do know of some resources that we have that are that we utilize in 911, for example, and also at the front desk when we have non-English speakers that's able to do like a phone call translation.
Right.
We've actually had conversations with the team leaders of our Vietnamese speakers, and they said that our Vietnamese speakers actually prefer to have somebody from HR instead of a translator, and they translate it amongst themselves, and we have face-to-face contact with them. In my experience, 4 years since I've been here, we've done it both ways, and both ways are successful. So I think we're going to give it a shot. I will definitely look into technology that can translate text.
The only piece that I'm questioning here or really pushing is like an Audible app, which is something that's going to read the book to you. If you have something like that that is put on top of this text, all they do is flip open the phone or their laptop, because these are folks that are in the field.
Yeah.
You know, they're sweating, they're dirty, they're not in a desk, they're not behind a closed scene. So just to have something that would be able to read that to them, to include them in on this, as compared to them having to go out of their way is
That's
all
absolutely
I'm
cool.
asking.
That's a great idea.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Morthland. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Sorry, so I loved your comments on measuring engagement. Obviously, establishing real KPIs is like, it's one thing creating, like LMS is a check in the box. The question is how effective is it? Not only is how much is it used, but how effective is it? And it's not just engagement, but how effective is it? So I think part of my feedback would be, what kind of KPIs do you want to establish, and continuing to make distinctions about, are the KPIs effective? That is ultimately but we don't want to check a box. We want to know, is it making a difference? And the challenge with LMSs, guys, as you guys probably know in the business, how effective are LMSs? And from my experience, it's always a challenge. Is my LMS really making a difference? And often, I can find it, have been discouraged by, it's the participation continues to gradually move down, right? And did it make a difference in the culture like the way I hoped it to? Did it make a difference from a training perspective? So, it's very, very easy to check a box with an LMS, but I would also say having real KPIs that you can really say, we're not hoping this is what we're intentionally going to get done, and at the end of the year, we either got it done or we didn't get it done.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further questions or, yes, Mr. Fisher?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. I know with zero-based budgeting coming up, we're going to be doing that on a lot of the things that we're looking at. Obviously, that's going to be very important. So I appreciate that comment. And I just want to say that this whole program that was put together, I would love to say that, Jim Horner, as he was leaving, made sure all this was taken care of, but that's not the case, so he can't have credit for that. And I would love to say that Linda is here and look what she's done in 2 days, but she can't take credit for this either. But now I've been here the whole time as a department director. So I could take credit for this, but I won't because I didn't have anything to do with it either. This team called me and said, hey, we want to show you what we've been doing while we've been in between managers. And this is what came out of this. So this team put this together because they knew it was something that they needed to do, and they had that opportunity between direction from directors. This is what came out of it. So you guys did awesome, and I hope we can scale this to other departments as we move forward. I was very proud of it.
It really is cool. It's a lot of initiative, a lot of ingenuity, and it is exactly what you hope for in any organization when leadership percolates from all levels. So thank you. But I will tell you, Mr. Fisher's not taking credit, but Mr. Knighton has been taking credit for it. Mr. Knighton on the record is an egomaniac. I've said it again, and I'll say it again. And so behind the scenes, he's been taking credit for this, so I apologize.
All right, thank you. Thank you all very much. Great presentation. All right, item number 4 has been deferred. Under economic development, item number 5, consideration of an intergovernmental agreement with the Development Authority of Roswell, the RDA, to complete a city master plan. Mr. Darrell Connolly.
Nice not being the new person that you are. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you about an intergovernmental agreement with the Development Authority of Roswell, the master plan of 400 Ridge Road. So, the mayor and council entered into, or they put together a 100-day plan, which included the development of a city master plan. And to move forward with this plan, we're recommending that we enter into this IGA with the Development Authority to do this master planning effort. The RDA is going to be responsible for leading this planning effort. The city will be providing funding for the plan, which was approved by the city council back in June 2022, in the amount of $300,000. Of this, $150,000 is going to be made available for this project. Initial payment is going to be made to the RDA in the amount of $25,000, with additional periodic payments being made to the RDA based on percentage of completion. This is a little bit different than what we did with the Downtown Development Authority, who had funding. The RDA currently is a startup, essentially, and so they have no funding. So we're fronting $25,000 for this particular project. The mayor and council will ultimately be responsible for the review and adoption of the master plan. The study area is a half-mile radius around the intersection of Georgia 400 and Holcomb Bridge Road. The black hash lines are areas that are not included in the planning effort. There are some areas that have some question marks there that are in white. And it's the anticipation that the group that's going to be doing the planning will just make sure that those areas are looked at and addressed as a complete plan. They won't be master planned, but they will, the Sizemore group believes that having connections to the river is important to this project, and so they're going to be thinking about those things as they complete the plan. I've got Andy McCary here. He's the chair of the Roswell Development Authority, and so they're going to be voting on this item next Tuesday. And happy to answer any questions you have.
Yes, thank you, Darrell. Council Member Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. So, Darrell, in looking through the actual MOU, I'm not seeing the language that we had added to the DDA one.
So the next item, we'll be talking about the scope of work,
Oh, okay,
which actually has that specific language.
okay. Then Thank you for that. And so in which case, my question is actually for Mr. Davidson. Yes. So I see this is basically what is committing $150,000. And I know in the discussion with the DDA one, the scope, if the scope was not followed, then that's a breach, in which case the taxpayers get their money back for the DDA one. And I just, with this being two separate documents, the intergovernmental agreement and then separately the scope, are taxpayers covered here in case the plan did not follow the scope of services, or would something have to be added to ensure taxpayers are protected?
So the payments in this contract will be made in installments based on the percentage of completion. So at any time that this council determines that they're not following the scope of services that you have approved, we can stop the payments until they get back on course with what's going on. So I believe that there will be draws being brought to council for approval based on the completion of the agreement with the Sizemore Group. That way the council will have the opportunity to actually look at these as they come in. If you would like some language to be put in there, we can add language before it comes to council.
I mean, I guess that'd be my preference of just something showing, because I mean, theoretically, if they're getting $25,000 and then installment payments based on percentage of completion, again, I just want to make sure that ultimately we're getting a finished copy. I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want there to be any risk or any issue of just that we've paid a portion of it and then not getting a completed project.
If I may, I would just caution you on having us come back to council every time a payment will need to be made.
Right, agreed.
Because you want to complete this project as quickly as possible.
And you actually, that's actually a great point. The last thing I want us to do is to slow it down. And so I guess my ideal would be if we had some type of just insurance that shows just ultimately if the finished product does not align with the scope of services, then taxpayers can really claw back that money. But yeah, I would not want this coming to council for every single increment.
Right, yes, and we certainly hear your concern, Councilmember Palermo, and I think it will be designed similar to the DDA's provision where that additional language was included. But I certainly understand your concern there. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
I was going to say, well, Michael, before I make any comments, you want to expound on this? Because I think you're saying something that I think we all in the council, I think, agree with you on. But I think there's a heart here that you kind of what you want our fellow residents to understand really what you're saying, the practicality of it, so that everybody understands kind of what you're talking about.
Sure, yeah. So basically right here, what we have is $150,000 being proposed, that the city would pay $150,000 for a master plan of this area, which I think is an incredible initiative, and I'm really glad that this mayor and council seems interested in wanting to master plan this area, because we need to bring redevelopment to this area, and a master plan, I think, is a great way to make some real progress and make some steps in the right direction. That being said, I think it's important anytime we're entering into an agreement where we're spending taxpayer money, we're making sure the taxpayers are protected. And the last thing I'd want is to risk we all vote on this, therefore the mayor signs it with us authorizing him to sign it, and then basically it doesn't match the scope of services, which means now we've paid taxpayer money and not gotten what we've told the taxpayers we'd get for them.
And to your point, like the reason that we are requesting to spend taxpayers' money and master plan it is there are a scope of services that we're looking for, and there's a scope of services we're not looking for. So I think people need to understand is like, oh, there's some things that we've been very clear about that, like, don't waste your time master planning certain things. We are expecting certain levels of execution. And that's really what you're addressing. And I think people need to understand that, like, you have, this council has not only the best interest of the city, but the strategic best interest of the city. And that's really kind of what you're referring to. You want to kind of lay that out a little bit more?
Yeah, exactly. And so obviously right here with a key entrance to the city on both sides. And then of course, really the importance of a very large property we have on the east side here, which hopefully could be a great redevelopment opportunity, a great opportunity for a destination on the east side and great activity. And really we have things in our code that we've added to make sure, for example, that it would not just turn into 100% apartment buildings. The fact that we would not just have, on a property just up from first floor to top floor, all just being large apartment buildings. And the scope of services is the way that we assure the residents we are looking for really the right mix that the east side and that all residents would be looking for.
And just expound on that. We would not be bringing in a master planner. We could literally take this corridor, right, and the corridor on the east side of 400. It would take no great genius to bring in sophisticated, high-density, multifamily developers in, and we could line the corridors up, and they'd be waiting in line to redevelop those corridors. That doesn't take any sophistication. That marketplace already exists. And it's the responsibility of this leadership to do something differently with intentional planning. It's what the whole thing's been about for the last year, is how do we transform the city for the next 20 years? And that's why we're bringing a master planner in here, to your point. So to your point about the scope of services is, at the end of the day, if the master planner, which I don't think anybody here participates, but you say you never know in life, comes back and brings back a bunch of high-density, standalone, multifamily projects, we're going to say, dude, we didn't need you to do that, right? We expected a very great opportunities to create catalytic and transformational development projects in here using your experience over the years where you've done this successfully in other cities. And that means different projects that look differently, that have a long-term impact positive for the city. And that's why the question of the scope of services is so important. Like, just we are on the same page, and just for the record, we have had very clear conversations with this particular vendor. We have a high level of confidence in this particular vendor, and we believe that this vendor will deliver this scope of services. Michael's point is, but if the vendor does not deliver on a scope of services, and that $150,000 is not spent wisely, Michael's asking, so what is our ability to act on that, correct?
That's absolutely right. So I have full faith in our RDA. I'm so excited about our RDA and just really optimistic that there's going to be some just great opportunities. Now we have this group focused on master planning, economic development, activity, et cetera. But at the end of the day, if we're going to be committing $150,000, we need to make sure we have an agreement that's protecting taxpayers to make sure we're getting exactly what we expect. And if we end up getting something delivered that did not align with the scope of services, that we have a path to then make sure that we're able to get that $150,000 back.
Amen. So, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, and Peter, I don't want to interrupt you if you got something, brother. If you want to go ahead. So this is where the rubber meets the road. So the reason that Daryl Conley is sitting at this table with us, the reason Andy McGarry is sitting here in the audience with us, Steve Stroud's in D.C. right now, the reason Ron Buckley, part of the DDA, the reason Peter is an economic liaison for the council, this is where the rubber meets the road. Because this council basically said, we're going to create 4 economic pods. And if we come from the north coming south, sorry, I'm at Georgia 400, I'm on the wrong way. Help me out here, where's C? Is this inverted on me? Okay.
You're right. Coming down.
This is Georgia 400?
Yeah.
All right, where's Highway 9? This is right here, right? Is this coming from Alpharetta?
That's it right there.
All right, this is coming from Alpharetta?
No, that's Holcomb Bridge Road.
This is Alpharetta. Okay, I wish this was turned the other way. Can you,
So where the C is,
that is Alpharetta.
Yes.
Where's Highway 9?
where the C is in city.
All right, this is,
It's Holcomb Bridge.
oh, this is the RDA one. Okay, what an idiot I am. I'm thinking of the other one.
But it's I think where the C is in city.
Yeah, that's where the other one is.
Oh my God. Got the Highway 9 one there? Okay. All right, so this is the 4th pod, correct? This is the 4th pod is this from here. This is coming from Gwinnett County, correct? Yes. All right, so if I follow this laser, this is the 4th economic pod. This right here is the 3rd economic pod. If I went over here, which off the line would be economic pod 1 and economic pod 2. Why I say this is so important is one thing, the clarity that the council had was creating economic pods with long-term intentionality. Why this is so important, and the city of Roswell is a great example of this. If you, and I would submit this to both pro and con advocates or opponents, there's a commonality among suburbs in the United States over the last 60 years, particularly if you look at the north side of first-tier marketplaces in the United States over the last 60 years. And there's a commonality about what happens. In the vast majority of instances, the growth is organic, and there's usually, as I call it, an infill, an outfill, and a backfill. And if you don't plan it, if you don't create intentionality, you end up with backfill. And if you look at our corridors here, everybody understands that these commercial corridors need massive love and attention to change what's going to happen in the next 20 years. Otherwise, what will occur, right? What could happen right now is you could line up these corridors over the next 10 to 15 years with high-density, standalone, multifamily projects. Nothing wrong with that. But I would dare say that from the standpoint of Roswell being currently 94,000 people, and from the standpoint of quality of life and economic intentionality and driving commercial business with 44 square miles, that this is what this is all about, is that we're making an intentional decision as a city to plan our economic development, and it starts with master planning. And that's really what this is all about. That's why everybody in this council ran and said, look, we're going to be intentional about what happens in our city. That's why we hired an economic development director, Daryl Conley, to come from New York City. That's why we activated an RDA headed by Andy McGarry. That's why we brought in Fold and say, look, we're going to start working in a whole different way with our Downtown Development Authority. That's why we've got Steve Stroud of Roswell, Inc. working with us in conjunction. That's why we made a new department of economic liaison with Peter Vanstrom. We said we are going to create a real strategic alignment and bring strategic forces to bear to change this city's economic outcome. That's what this is all about. And to Council Members Palermo's perspective, we are going to be wise stewards of the money that we do ask our residents to spend on the investments in changing the economic long-term picture of this city. This is a big deal. And I appreciate Councilmember Palermo being a great steward of our fellow residents' money.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Any further comment or discussion? Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Conley. That was a nice presentation. And I think the one thing that's interesting here is I don't believe that the Sizemore Group is asking for any more funding to increase their study area.
So I just want to be clear. So where the question marks are, they're going to consider those areas, taking it into account. I don't believe they're going to be master planning per se, those areas. So it's just looking at what could potentially be. So we can certainly get clarity on that before the council meeting.
No, I think that's a great gift. We're not going to say no to that. I think it's nice if they're going to go above and beyond what they've been asked to do. That's exciting. My other comment is Andy McGarry and the RDA. Thank you, Andy, very, very much for taking on the committee and for already driving them with enthusiasm. Their first meeting was phenomenal, and it was so fun to see the amazing minds that are put together, and putting them right away on a project like this is going to be nothing but fruitful. I can't wait to watch them work together. And I can promise along the way, and I'm sure Andy will back me up on this, that this won't suddenly become a proposal that appears and is done without some guidance and some looks along the way, so that I do appreciate that we do want to protect our taxpayers. At the same time, I do also appreciate that our volunteers on the RDA and our Economic Development Director and Steve Stroud are going to be on top of this project with the rest of the council as it goes through the process. And I'd also like to mention that this area has been studied many times in the past. We talk about plans that have been done in Roswell. there was a plan all the way back to 2005 that was very comprehensive and very thorough for this area. But we are now almost 20 years into the future, and I think it's high time that we took a good look at this entire area that's such a valuable node. So I'm glad that this is the area that the council and the mayor have chosen to address, in addition to the Highway 9 and Holcomb Bridge area. I'll say the same thing about both of these. I'm just so excited that we are committing ourselves and challenging ourselves to see what we can come up with for our citizens as a redevelopment projects. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Councilmember Vanstrom. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And I just wanted to get this, or I just wanted to thank everybody for working so hard. We've got two major initiatives, one on the east side and one on the west side. And the east side, the establishing the RDA and all of the work in these last 8 months that has gone into really all of the, so much to benefit the east side of Roswell that's been talked about so much. I just want the public to know, because they may not know everything behind the scenes that's going on, what it takes to establish a development authority, and the Roswell Development Authority specifically established for that reason. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of work, and kudos to everybody and to my team, city staff, and everybody that is working together to make this happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Any further comments or discussion on this item? Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
Actually, with the permission of this committee, I'd like to make a motion to move this forward with our city attorney adding language that just ensures if the $150,000 is connected to a scope of services.
On this one? Yes. All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Palermo, with that notation. That was a motion, and do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Hall. All right. Motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of moving this item forward? All in favor? Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. The second item on, or the second item and related item on the agenda is consideration of the scope of services for master planning by the Development Authority of Roswell. I know in large part we had some discussion about that, but please, Mr. Connolly, if you would summarize this item.
Thank you. So the Development Authority of Roswell is going to be entering into an agreement with the Sizemore Group to do this master planning effort at Georgia 400 and Holcomb Bridge Road. They'll be entering into the intergovernmental agreement that we just discussed, and the city would be providing them up to $150,000 for that effort. The scope of services for this item envisions the site as an opportunity for mixed-use development to provide Class A office, commercial, and residential space. The plan will serve as a framework to attract high-quality development to Roswell. The scope includes specific language that we discussed last month, which is the master plan should be mindful of the strategic and comprehensive plans for the city. The planning design work will recognize UDC section 13.4.3, letter E, which addresses the location of multifamily. It will also follow UDC section 2.1.1, letter J, mixed-use building that indicates that no residential is allowed on the ground floor. The process, as with the project over at Holcomb Bridge Road and Highway 9, will include site analysis, interviews with city staff, key stakeholders, case study research, and a 3-day workshop. That could be changed to a 2-day workshop if you so desire, but there would be no change in pricing. The end result will be a master plan and a summary with recommendations. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Any questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Connolly.
Thank you.
Under Finance, item number 7, consideration of a contract renewal for the City of Roswell's continued participation in the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program in coordination with the Georgia Department of Human Services. Mr. Luckett.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. Good evening, everyone. The state of Georgia received $37 million in federal funding to administer the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program. The program assists qualified low-income households with paying their water utility services. The funds are used to clear past due balances or to pay lump sum payments towards future bills. Mayor and Council approved the city's participation in this program last November. And today we're requesting consideration to renew this program, the city's participation in the program, for another year. Since the program started last November, Roswell residents have received approximately $7,500 in assistance. That's about 15 customers, average of $500 per customer. Just to give you a little bit of background about the program is actually administered through the Department of Human Services at the state level and through community action agencies across the state. So for our area, Metro Atlanta, it's Fulton Atlanta Community Action Agency. They're the ones that contract with the Department of Human Services. They conduct the client intake, determine income eligibility. They approve the payments. Our role in this whole program is really just to receive the payments, post it to the accounts, and we're done. So that's the program, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Luckett. Any questions for Mr. Luckett regarding this item? Seeing none, yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Participation seems low. Is it a lack of information out there that this program is available to potential customers? Or are we informing them that they potentially can qualify?
We are. We probably deserves a refresh of the communication efforts because when the program first started, we worked with community relations to put out information to residents about the option that is out there. And the other piece to this is, we have our call center that receives customer calls. A lot of times with people calling with past due bills, they're always referred to this organization as well. So that's how a lot of the reference takes place, but definitely I think it deserves a refresh in communication.
If it's an opportunity to get funds for us and it doesn't cost us on the front end to get the information out, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
No, sorry, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a follow-up, is the program bilingual, the communication program?
I can double check on that. I believe that it is, but I'll double check that.
Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
For the individuals calling in and requesting information, you're referring them to another organization. Do we ask for any feedback from the individual around how easy it was to work with the action committee? Are we given any feedback around, were they timely in their responses to them? That's the type thing, because I know a lot of people, when they ask for help and they don't get help, they get frustrated and throw their hands in the air and walk away. And it's a certain number that I'd like to make sure that we try to capture if at all possible.
I can tell you I haven't heard feedback, and I'm not sure that we asked for feedback about how well they worked with the actual agency. I can tell you that it's not super simple. They do have to provide documentation, income eligibility, document all of that kind of stuff. So it does require some work on behalf of the resident to demonstrate that they qualify. But I can speak with staff and see if they've heard any feedback about the working relationship.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Actually, Will, thank you. That's a great point. And to your Will's point, I think we need to be on the offense of determining whether or not, instead of waiting for that feedback, my recommendation is let's figure out how effective the program is. 2, how utilitarian the program is. 3, if the program is applicable, is it objectionable to use or to get into the program? In other words, do the people who need it, can they use it, and can they use it relatively effectively and easily, or is there a lot of roadblocks and jumps and hoops you have to go through, which is often the case, and that's such a great question. And with all due respect, Ryan, forgive me, let's go a little deeper than asking, you know, like, let's get into it and find out from a user perspective, like, how hard is this really? Like, I bet we might be a little surprised kind of to Will's question, like, boy, there's a lot of hoops you gotta jump through. This is not so easy to do. It's a great question.
Sure. Yes, thank you for those comments. We'll follow up with that. Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, then we'll ask for a motion to move this item forward. Yes, a motion by Councilmember Hall. Second by Councilmember Morthland. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Passes unanimously. Under Recreation and Parks, item number 8, consideration to approve the Department of Recreation, Parks, Historic, and Cultural Affairs 5-year park master plan.
No, sir, you can't.
All right. All right, Mr. Leatherman, thank you.
You bet. Just wanted to run through a couple of items on our 5-year park master plan, provide some background and some highlights of the outcomes of the 5-year master plan, the work that we've been doing, and then answer any questions, respond to any feedback associated with that. Just by way of some background, we've had a series of 5-year master plans, some dating back as far as 2001, 2012, 2017. And a lot of this is predicated and based on our department's accreditation, since we've been accredited since 2002. And we're currently undergoing the reaccreditation process. We'll be doing that coming into the first of the calendar year, and then have our on-site evaluation in the spring of 2023. And been working on the master plan since about November of last year, when the project was initiated. Some system-wide evaluation, had some conversations with mayor and council in March regarding the 100-day plan review, made some revisions to the scope and to the capital investment assessment, and I'll go over that a little bit later in the presentation. We've had some staff and commission drafts and feedback, steering committee review, and then the council presentation today. There are a couple of components associated with the master plan. The executive summary, which is really that high-level goals and objectives associated with the master plan. And the plan components are the building blocks of that executive summary, and then we also have the appendices and the detailed summaries of the master plan for anybody that really needs to drill down into the data, or from a staff perspective as we're looking at grants, both at the state and federal and even local level. Some of that detail is necessary just to justify some of the recommendations and essentially prove some of the work that we've done as we move forward in those application processes and make recommendations to our mayor and council. In the plan components, we have benchmarking, system-wide recommendations, and our action plan. Just kind of how that rolls out. The executive summary, again, will give you that high-level detail. Where do we sit from a benchmarking or from a comparison of our surrounding jurisdictions and nationally, according to the National Park and Recreation Association. As you get down to the plan components, it takes that level of information and provides even more detail as we look at state and other comparison benchmark agencies, as well as our neighboring communities, and providing where do we stand as it relates to investment, park acreage, and other programs that we offer. And then it also has some additional comparisons and analysis that we use not only for our own community, but as we look at the communities around us in those benchmarks. In a lot of cases, you'll find that Roswell, as we continue to drive in our parks and recreation, it's probably no big surprise that we continue to lead our region in our, not only in our investment, but also in our acreage and our cost recovery and what we provide in and around our community. And then the analysis and the details take some of that information and it even dives further down into a series of graphs, charts, and tables that if you really want to get granular on the information, you can find that towards the end of the document. Just some additional examples of that. Just wanted to highlight some community feedback that you'll find contained in the master plan. Continued to support and actions by our Recreation and Parks Department, ensuring that we remain an asset to the city. 99% continued support for our parks and recreation. The second bullet point there is continuing to protect our natural resources, maintain our city-sponsored programs, and continue to prioritize the Chattahoochee River Parks as destination for residents and visitors. I don't think it's any surprise that that is a focus of this mayor and council. It's continued to be supported by our community and by the department as we move forward and look towards November with our bond question. Motivation to use facilities and more programs, improvement of existing facilities. Number one recommendation. And as we look at how do we invest in our existing parks and facilities, the next item that we're talking about today is investment into our East Roswell Community Park. About $3 million that this mayor and council has allocated to improvement of our existing facilities, direct outcome of conversations with this mayor and council and your prioritization in our budget process. And engagement key findings. Upgrade to existing parks and facilities continues to show up in a number of different places. Habitat restoration, upgrade and expanding connectivity through walking, biking, and mountain biking, implementation of the River Parks Master Plan, and a number of other recommendations in the plan document. Just wanted to highlight this as a revitalization and upgrade of existing facilities, continued focus on our fields, large community parks, gymnasiums, community recreation centers, tennis courts, swimming pools, as revitalization and upgrades of our existing facilities from our community feedback and highlights. And then supportive actions by the department to ensure that Roswell continues to be an asset to the community, almost 100% either very supportive or somewhat supportive of that action. Cities continued protection of our natural resources, all the way through down towards the middle, right here, of investment of existing parks and deferred maintenance into our existing facilities continues to be very supportive and obvious as you're walking around our facilities, and also speaks to, I think, our work around the bond question coming up in November, but also our budget priorities that this mayor and council has allocated in our budget process. Existing community feedback and highlights, a lot of the same themes here. I think it was important as we met in March of how are we creating a planning document that transitions us into being action-oriented? And you'll see the capital improvement projects about at page 84 of the document that lists every single park and facility and prioritizes improvements at that facility. What do we need to be thinking about short-term and long-term in the next couple of years, 5 years, and then even 10 years down the road? We have that same roadmap for development of new facilities within the planning document. This was essentially the building block for a lot of our recommendations moving forward into the budget process. We were in the middle of reworking some of it as you were approving our budget, but this becomes the tool that we activate on as it relates to investment in our parks and facilities throughout the entire city. We also have our strategic goals and results, again, wanting to be action-oriented, summarizing all of the documentation that we've built in the 5-year master plan. How do we make that relevant to the department and to the community? This is a component for each of our divisions within the department. What are we working towards on the execution side of our 5-year master plan? How are we going to hold ourselves accountable to that, report out to the community on those items, and then continue to amend as necessary? We want to be nimble enough within this document that as there's new strategies that are being developed, whether it be through ongoing conversations with the council and with our community, how do we amend some of these strategies on an annual basis, report back out onto the community, and continue to focus on what matters not only to this mayor and council, but to our community at large in each of our new areas and each of our areas of the department. Had a lot of help developing this over the years. Obviously, want to thank mayor and council for your continued support. A number of our staff members involved in the planning process, as well as we had our strategic master plan steering committee that went back all the way till November to helping us advise from our different booster clubs and community organizations that really rolled up the recommendations and helped us formulate our planning process moving forward. That's a summary of the document. Be happy to tackle any questions or specifics that you have within the planning process and, of course, the outcomes and results associated with it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Any questions or comments or additional information from Mayor and Council? Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Leatherman. Just very, very high level, well, thank you very much for that and for this dossier here. It looks like an Atlanta phone book because we have such a vast park system, and I'm grateful for that as a resident and on behalf of all of our residents here and our visitors that use it. A couple of things that stand out to me in this plan is, and I think every resident should go look at this, I'm visual, looking at the maps to see how close each one of us residents are to any given park is fascinating. And I also love skipping around a little bit, but related to that, the attention to detail to still acquiring other pocket park land or developing what hasn't been developed that we already own. Affording more availability to our residents and our visitors, and then, of course, promoting economic development when people do come and visit and can go see other areas of our city and potentially spend money. But I found that to be really resourceful and helpful to me, just in being able to see exactly who was touched by which parks and how close, I mean, within a 10-minute or 5-minute or 2-minute walk. So anyway, just an observation on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions, comments at this time? Yes, Mayor Wilson?
I was just going to ask Councilman Northland if he had any comments in reference to kind of some of the standpoint of the investment, the potential investment and how it might impact some of this.
Kind of figured that question was going to come up. But yes, as Director Leatherman put forward earlier, he's got 3 good points that he's driving home here in the plan comment section. The executive summary, which is a very easy way of understanding how to digest this 150-page document. We've got the plan components and finding detail, which is the building blocks, and I heard him say that earlier, and then the appendices, details, deep dive, granular. So as we approach this document right here, this is the reason that the bond items were addressed in the order of how we put this together. When you go in and really dig into the feedback from the community, the feedback from Brand Center Carroll, the deferred depreciation, the things that we need to tackle in sequential order, it's all right here in this. And so this big ask that we're making of the public coming forward, this is where it was developed. And this is a huge document. But for just a quick review, executive summary is where you'd like to live.
I would want to ask you a separate question, with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
I would like to ask you a separate question, Mr. Councilmember Northland, but I'd also like to have Jeff. Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about the statistical modeling in here? Because it's fairly consistent when you look through this. And I think it's something that, in other words, it's helped to inform not just the strategic plan, but also council. You get a sense that there's been a consistency from the standpoint, if you look at the modeling, of how we're coming to clarity about decision-making. Like, it's not willy-nilly like, well, Will thinks this, or Lee thinks this, or Peter thinks that, or Mike thinks that, or Lee thinks that. There's a lot of good data that the residents have given pretty consistently.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for that question, sir, and you know, it's twofold. It's, well, actually, I would argue there's probably 3 components in that is, you know, at the core of interviewing with our maintenance staff of what are they seeing out in our parks and facilities just from an operation perspective. Where do we see the impacts? Where do we see, you know, all the way down to how, you know, how many times do we have to empty a trash can in a certain park? You know, to me, those are the elements that really speak to where our impacts and usability are. And then I think I heard a lot just early on in our conversations in December and January of how are we investing in our parks and facilities, and what do we really truly want to be doing? Because as you walk around our parks and facilities, and I've said this a couple of times, and it's an uncomfortable thing for me to say as a parks director that our parks and facilities aren't always to the standard that we would like them to be. That's an uncomfortable statement because it's a reflection on me and my department, and the work that we're trying to do and the excellence that we're trying to provide to the community. But the reality is that our modeling is showing through that community feedback that investments in our existing parks and facilities is a high need and high value of our community, and it's noticed. But more importantly, that the value of our parks and facilities are also equally as high across all segments. It's rare that you see, let me just find it real quick. I think that was it. Ensure Roswell City Recreation and Parks remain an asset to the city as the community grows and diversified. 91% of our respondents were very supportive, and 8% were somewhat supportive, which only leaves 1% left for some other place within that conversation. And to me, those are the elements that we see pop up very consistently. And there's this other one right here: invest in existing park and deferred maintenance. 69% is very supportive, and 26% is somewhat supportive. You're still on the very, very high end of the top two categories, and you're halfway down the page on where that actually ranks. But you're still at that 80% range, a little bit higher than 80% range of people in our community really driving at that maintenance of our existing parks and facilities and investment of our existing park and facilities. And that holds true in conversations in the field, holds true, I would say, in conversations around this table with mayor and council, and then also in the feedback that we receive from our community. And that's the consistent piece that I see continuing to come up. And then I think to Councilmember Hill's point, you also start to see that there are some gaps within our service delivery that we need to work on. There are some gaps in some of our communities and within some of our census tract that we're not at 100% perfection yet. And we've got some work to do. And the mapping exercise is a really quick and easy way to really just flip through and see, okay, where do we see gaps within a 5 or a 10-minute walk from every neighborhood in our community, and they can then access a dog park or an aquatic facility or a tennis court or just a park. And that also speaks to why is it important to connect within our sidewalks? Why is it important to connect within our trails so that people have those safe routes to park, schools, and commercial corridors? And it's all embedded and interconnected not only with this plan, but with our other plans and the Bike Ped Master Plan in particular, and then also our planning documents that you all are working on a regular basis.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up, Jeff, so it's interesting. So there's a lot of good data to pull out of this, very relevant. But the other thing is one of the things, and I wanted you to mention it, is it's the high level of participation you got in the data inputs. In other words, a lot of people participated in this. As you go through here, the overwhelming amount of respondents that you asked responded, and they responded on the overwhelming amount of questions. Yep. But one of the things, and this is why I really appreciate yours and Mr. Knighton's leadership and this council's leadership, is that this is really where the rubber meets the road in terms, I would argue, that three of the most critical elements, particularly of this great city, and for any city, for any challenge, any community, is right. First is public safety, police and fire. And then the third is, and certainly with our cities, what distinguishes yourself, and it's your park system. And this city has a great history with its park system. But you have to be very careful, because sometimes you can get great history. You've made the investments, but you won't continue to make the investments, then you begin to have degradation. And you can still be pumping your chest saying, hey, we're number one, we're number one, we're number one. And to your point, like you said, well, I feel responsible for it. Well, we're all responsible for this. And that's why it's so important. I hope Will will communicate on this a little bit. That's why it's so important, I think, to talk about, do we responsibly reinvest into our infrastructure so that we can have a great park system a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. We might have had a great park system 10 years ago, but there's been some degradation, and it's hard to admit to that. And that's really what you're saying as the director. Like, it's hard sometimes for me to go around like, I got a great park system, but I'm seeing real degradation in my system, and I still want to pump it up, and people are still saying, hey, we're doing good. But you have to be very careful that there can be a place where if you don't pay attention to it, you don't do something about it, you wake up one day and all of a sudden you're beyond repair, and the cost to fix it gets so dramatic that it loses its priority. So it's a critical time in our city's history right now to seriously deal with the master plan, with your master plan, and to talk about, is this the right time to make an investment in the city's future?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just from an informational perspective. From the last plan 5 years ago and perhaps the one before that, are there any trends that are emerging, any things that you see differently that are rising up to the top, the cream that's rising up to the top now that wasn't previously?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Let me just ponder it for a moment. Our strategy was a little more aggressive in some ways with this master plan, particularly around getting down to the true cost associated with, when we talk about capital investment of our existing facilities, what does that mean? Because our residents, from our public input, the residents really continue to prioritize keep and protect what we have. But we hadn't and haven't assigned a number, a true dollar amount to what that is. And you see the top page right here, table 6.1, represents roughly, it's not even roughly, $100 million of maintenance over the next 10 years of our existing facilities, not to mention recommendations of future expansion of new facilities as our community continues to grow, which is another $100 million worth of recommendations. And so to me, that's one of the trends. On the user side, it's not new. It's trails and connectivity continues to rise. I will say skate parks and pickleball courts, those were the top two recommendations out of new facilities, and skate parks are a new one for us. And this mayor and council has responded to that and put provisions within bond recommendations to include that as an investment within our community, and they've done that with you've done that with the pickleball courts as well. Pickleball, we'll just talk momentarily on it. We currently have 4 pickleball courts at Grimes Bridge. I'm there in that park 2 or 3 times a week, just moving back and forth with practices, and there's rarely a time that they are not packed. And it continues to we see that trend all over our country right now and beyond, that continues to be a growing sport. Skate parks continue to be a high need. And I would say those are probably the 2 new trends that we're seeing from last 5 years into this 5 years, that we have provisions to respond to and to be able to respond to the community in that way. The trails and connectivities, I look at the investment down on the river, I look at 7 branches, I look at Big Creek, being able to start connect those trails also responds to that need within our community for alternative modes of mobility, exercise, and transportation as well. So those would probably be the 3 I would say.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Morthland.
For our conversational piece, can you hit real quick how much deferred maintenance we have on the books right now?
It's about that $100 million number as we look out over the next 10 years.
$100 million. Over the past couple of years, can you touch on how much you've received from the city to deal with maintenance, deferred maintenance?
Yeah, in this current year, we have about $1.2 million allocated in our budget for maintenance of existing park facilities. We have $2.5 million assigned to East Roswell Park, which we'll talk about at the next agenda item at this meeting. Previous years, about just shy of $100,000 in our last budget cycle, and about $300,000 to $400,000 prior to that. Especially during the COVID time, we kind of isolate that as an anomaly. And prior to COVID, we were right around $600,000 on an annual basis, give or take, was our average in investments.
So we've got some work to do. We've got some improvements to get after, which I'm excited to see with this bond put together. Because we've got a lot of work to get our parks and recreation system, recreation and park system, back up to that level that we all appreciate. It's there. All we have to do is just dust it off a little bit. Now, one thing I would like to see, or one thing I'd like to mention, is the feedback highlights slide that you had up. This is going to be easy to understand. Every one of the line items on that, you can apply our mission, our vision statement to be the #1 family community in America, and that's why that's answered that way. That is just very easy to go after right there. So I'm excited. This is a big document. This is the grail that we follow, and with the bond coming up, we're going to be hitting the road, doing a lot of road shows, doing a lot of public input.
Thank you. Thank you. you. One of the things that I observed was obviously residents want to continue to prioritize the Chattahoochee River parks as a destination. And in the earlier presentation in economic development, you see that the master planner has, at least in his early assessment, identified connecting to the river as a part of this master planning effort, which speaks to the importance of that great natural resource that we have. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
I just want to say this for not only I want to say this for posterity, Jeff and Mr. Knighton. So long after this mayor and city council are gone, what I would suggest to my fellow residents, because the parks are a gigantic part of the city. Your department is a gigantic part of the city. It's been a giant part of the city's success. And Will is much more kind than I am. The city abrogated its responsibility, and you were very quiet about those numbers. But if residents truly understood the lack of financial commitment that we have made to our parks in the last really decade, I think they would be really outraged, and understanding that quite a hole has been, that the park system has been put in financially. And so what I'm asking to further to future city councils and the future mayors going forward in the city of Roswell, and the future city administrators, and the future directors of parks and recreations and cultural affairs and historical assets. You cannot deny the responsibility financially and the commitment that we've made in the past, and that we're making currently, and we're going to make forward going. And that is, so regardless of who you like politically or who you don't like politically, I don't think this issue needs to be at the forefront going forward. Police and fire, boom, boom. And right behind that, Parks and Rec. And we cannot make the mistake that we have made in the past of not financially supporting a significant infrastructure that we have invested in, and that our community says with clarity, time after time after time, this is hugely important to us. It's why I live here. It's why people live here. And yet, we have not financially backed that up over the last several years. This council, this past year for the FY23 budget, stepped it up. Got, I think, to 1.3 on the operational maintenance side. Honestly, it's not enough. We're gonna have to pick it up. And I know people like to hear that because it's about spending money. But there are things that if you don't spend the money, it will come back to haunt you, and you're gonna have to spend more money, or you just ultimately decide that, you know what, we're not gonna have those resources the way we thought we were gonna have them and enjoy them. And I don't think that's why people in their 30s and 40s keep moving to Roswell. I think people moving in their 30s and 40s keep moving to Roswell is that this is where I wanna raise my family. And if you look at the participation levels of the people who use our parks and how they use our parks, regardless of their age group, they're active users, highly active users, and that says, I want to keep using this park system. So I'm just saying from a posterity perspective, whoever's mayor and whoever's in city council, that they will never make the mistake that we made over the last several years again. And I hope people, regardless of who they support politically, will look at this and say, honestly, don't make that mistake again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mayor Wilson. Any questions regarding this item? All right, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Morthland.
Sir.
Second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is the review and guidance for staff's recommendations for East Roswell Park capital improvements, FY23. Thank you so much, Mr. Leatherman.
So in your packet, you have a report in an Excel spreadsheet on how we've outlined the improvements at East Roswell Park. Taylor has been working, and I apologize, it's a little bit, we've just kind of finished up some exhibits to hopefully help guide the discussion and make it a little bit more clear on what it is that we're trying to do. I think the biggest challenge that we have is to clearly articulate how we're going to invest $3 million into East Roswell Park when the reality is that we've got about $9 million worth of opportunity of investment in that maintenance, just like the conversation we were just having. And so, we have this effort of what is the worst that goes first and how do we help improve those areas, but then also tackle some key initiatives from this mayor and council in particular around the dog park area and some other investments of the facility. So I'm just going to walk you through the improvements that we have, but just want to highlight kind of what we think about going forward. And the mayor, I don't know, this is probably about a month ago, asked me a question of, what does new feel like? When we go into our parks and facilities, and the idea is we want them to feel and look new. This is a project that staff has been working on over the last couple of years. This is the Arts Center off Faust Road. We've had some allocations from council over the last 3 budget cycles to be working in this area. And this is what we're able to transform that into. This is kind of where we've taken the frontage of that park facility, which truly is one of our entrances. And how do we transform it into a way that really showcases that you're entering into East Roswell Park? It's with our Arts Center. And this is the front of the building, and the dog park will actually be behind the building that you see at the top of the page. But just try to, as a way to articulate in our minds, where are we trying to head with our parks and facilities, and truly look at what does the brand of the city of Roswell look and feel like within our parks. And this is what we want people to see and feel as they come into our parks and facilities, understand where they are. It's celebrating the community of Roswell and what we have to offer in our parks and facilities. And so as we look at $2.5 to $3 million, and I'll explain the financing behind that here shortly. We've broken our park down into 4 quadrants. We'll start at the north end and kind of work our way around, and then we'll talk about the dog park improvements at the end. As we look at the northeast quadrant, Fulton County Library, Holcomb Bridge Road, working on the dog park, ADA walkways, improvements to signage and general park improvements, along with design and engineering in this area. The last slide will go into more detail in this quadrant, but that's truly our focus here. Not a lot of work in the disc golf course area. Really, the work here is focused in and around the improvements to the dog park, roughly about $500,000 worth of improvements on the back side of the Arts Center. As you transition into the kind of southeast quad, just down the road from where that park entrance sign was that you saw earlier, we have work that we're doing in and around the ball diamonds, some scoreboard replacements, replacing number 3 LED lights and upgrading that field. That is one of the fields that is closest to our resident community there. We have some light bleed that's happening in and around the community, and by transitioning those lights out to LED, it's going to help with some of that cast off of lights. And it also gives us an opportunity to showcase where we're headed next as we work to retrofit all of the lights at these ball fields and soccer fields in the future to LEDs. Essentially what we're doing is taking the most problem area first and tackling that. So we're not doing all 4 fields. We are able to do 1 field and trying to spread out the investments into the highest needs and highest value areas. General park improvement in this area, I think this is a really, really important one. We talked about trail connectivity and trail walking. We have a trail gap right here, and we've got this trail extension that we will finish that then allows you to circumnavigate the entirety of the park system. We were able to do a small portion of the trail in a previous project. Here's our frontage that I showed you the photo of. It stops right here. This trail extension will complete the trail around East Roswell Park, allow people to circumnavigate the entirety of the park, be off the road, and have a much safer route when walking in that area. We talked a little bit about this, but we have some significant deferred maintenance in all of our parks and facilities. And what we don't want to do as a department is we don't want to put new stuff on top of old stuff. And so we need to evaluate our stormwater system, repair that stormwater system, make sure that it's up to our current standards, stormwater, and that our sister department is helping us with those improvements. So they will be taking the lead on the evaluation and design of any improvements that are necessary for our large stormwater system. We have a detention pond down here. We actually have a fairly large drain that runs down underneath this parking lot, underneath these fields, and then off into the creek on the other side. Frankly, what I don't want to do is do a bunch of improvements to this parking lot and then have an issue with the storm drain underneath it. So we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. And so as you start to see the storm drain improvements that you'll see pop up in a couple of different places, we have a handful of those in this park that we'll be tackling first and then start working our way up. Community center, some indoor improvements, security cameras, some front lobby renovations, and indoor bleachers as part of the community center improvements here in this space. As you work your way around soccer field, which is field area 2 right here, this is in I would say the most disrepair of any of our fields in this area and needs to be replaced. And so we have that identified as this part of the park improvements, which is this field right here, along with the fencing, some repairs to restroom building over here, as well as playground space will be a part of that. And then we also have some repairs to this area in the playground and pavilion in that space as well. And then we move into the northwest quadrant, working on the tennis courts. Here in this area, also working on the picnic pavilion and playground, and some other general improvements in landscape and trail repairs along this trail section, and some improvements to the parking area here as well. We talked briefly about the dog park area. These are the current conditions of the dog park behind the Arts Center. This has been a conversation and a focus of this improvement area and ensuring that we improve this space. This is just a general rendering. I flipped it on you, but essentially you have the Arts Center right down here at the bottom. We've done the frontage improvements. We've completed this upper parking lot. This allocation allows us to come in and start to work in these areas, actually fix this gravel driveway, create the one-way entrance into this space, and then back out this way, create the parking that will support both the Arts Center and the dog park area, and be able to do some retention in this space with some bioretention areas, capturing stormwater that comes off this slope where this house is. This is a gravel parking lot right now, and be able to retain this and do some bioretention in this area to support the dog park improvements. We're close to not quite doubling the size of the dog park, but the intent is to create 2 different areas similar to the Lita Thompson Dog Park, where we'd be able to shut half of the dog park down, be able to do repairs into that space. Dog parks are a maintenance adventure, I'll call them, in that they just get loved to death. And so we need the ability and the capacity to be able to shut them down, do some restoration work, and then bring them back to life on a pretty frequent basis. And those are summarized here in the spreadsheet. About $2.5 million in one-time capital. We also pulled deferred maintenance money out of the 1.3 that we were talking earlier. So that's the park maintenance fund that you see here. And our intent is really to go in and make sure that we're improving the East Roswell area, meeting this council's expectations, improvements for the community, and hitting both a maintenance need, but also some of those improvements that we talked about in the budget process. We wanted to bring this forward to council just for any comment, any questions that you may have, and then our intent from this committee is just for guidance, and then we will begin the contracting and design work process as necessary. For the design and engineering components, you approved some on-call contracts last month, and that allows us to activate those contracts with this funding and begin the design work. Some of the construction work we'll be doing in-house, and some of it we'll need to do through some contractors, and then let those contracts go as we move forward. Happy to entertain any questions.
Councilmember Morthland.
In talking about the fields and the athletic teams that utilize the fields, with what we're proposing right here on a standalone basis, what is the first season you anticipate to be disrupted through this field maintenance?
For the replacement of the turf field?
Well, we got baseball, we got cross, we've got soccer, we've got all kind of things going on at the same time. What is the first season you would anticipate as being affected?
So we've got 2 targets that we are actually talking about today at our project scoping meeting. February for the synthetic field, and potentially the first part of summer in June. Because we're not taking the workload actually to replace the synthetic turf, we're not rebuilding a new field, is probably only, in a very optimistic, is about 30 days at the most, to be able to take that field offline, replace the turf, have the contractors line up. Probably the biggest challenge with this is actually redoing the fence line around it, and ensuring that the concrete, we're probably gonna have to replace the concrete that the fence line is embedded in around that field. And that's actually some demo work and then some rebuild. So I don't see actually, we're gonna be able to plan around impacts at this location during this project season with very minimal or minor impacts to our sports and facilities. I think we'll be able to wedge that in with being able to move programs out of this facility and into our other ones. The challenge comes with additional funding if we're more aggressive on the financing side and we want to do some heavy work to all 4 of the ball fields all at the same time, that becomes a little bit more challenging. We're not proposing that in this component of the park improvement area. So honestly, I don't think we're going to see really any impacts for the community in this one.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. A couple of questions. While we're here on this picture, was it in Greenville that Bill St. Aubin showed us a graphic of how to develop softball fields where they did the quadrants and made them actually visually more attractive and more functional?
I don't know if I saw that.
Does anybody do?
Okay.
Perhaps maybe just offline you can share that.
Sure.
Because that would be a very nice addition.
Sure.
For the park here. And then my second question, will you be reaching out to one like a Purina or somebody like that to see if they would partner with you on the dog park in exchange for signage or whatever?
Absolutely. I think, sponsorships are always something that we are looking for and open to tracking down. As we start to get into the design, I think the helpful part is to actually have something that you can show and sell essentially in that partnership. If this is what the park is going to look like, this is where the signage can go, and we can transition that as we get into the design side and really start to shop that around in a partnership aspect. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Knighton. More high level than direct. I'm going to take a quick memory lane walk, remembering back last year, hearing about a budget cut for maintenance, and I was standing in this park. I live on the west side, as far as I can be in the west, off of 92, and so I don't frequent that park other than meetings, which has been a monthly event. So I'm not on the field with my kids or otherwise, so I don't have a personal connection there as far as other than it being in my city. But taking pictures of the deferred maintenance is what I didn't call it that then. I was calling it falling apart park. Looking at the turf, looking at the fields. I've never had a baseball or softball kid player, but looking at the fields and thinking, oh my gosh, and then hearing that fallout of the money being sucked out of the budget to take care of that. Again, I'm just looking at it at the meetings that I've attended in that facility there, the community center, but it was a gut punch for me. And then coming up into our budget session, Councilmember Vanstrom beat the heck out of us about we've got to invest, and we all submitted very quickly, firsthand knowing, what it is, not as far as seeing it. So this is a very easy commitment for me on every level, and it's the right thing to do, and it's part of our park system, whether I'm on the west, east, or mid side of Roswell. It's exciting to know we're here. I'm ready for blast off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
I just want to thank you, Jeff, for really listening to the residents. For years, they've been really frustrated by the lights, and to prioritize that and not just wait for the hope that bond money comes through. I just appreciate that for the residents. That was excellent use of the funds, and thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Well, it's not for lack of trying that Jeff's been trying to get this done. So, Peter, I want to thank you. And I want to thank you, Lee. And I want to thank you, Will. And Christine and Mike. Because it's you five that had voted and made a difference and took an operational maintenance budget of $60,000 in the previous budgetary year. Think about that. The previous mayor and council had a $60,000 for operational maintenance for Parks and Rec. And until you guys came on board and you put $1.3 million in the budget, which we'll argue, we need to improve that even, right? But I like how you said it, Lee. Deferred maintenance is a fancy term for parks that are breaking down. And that's what you see as a resident. And that's why I will say, implore again. So you have to give this man and this man the resources to be able to execute the vision and the plan. You can talk about it all day and it sounds good. We got a great park system. But unless you invest in it, unless you spend the money ongoing to keep the parks in sharp shape, they will degrade. And that's happened in this city. And our residents know that. And it's time that we do something about it. It's time that we reinvest. And I'll say it one more time, sometimes repetition is the mother of skill, that I implore future councils and mayors to give the tools for the department heads and for the city administrators to be able to take care of our parks and rec system going forward. I don't ever want to be, I don't want this city to ever be in this shape again, to be in this shape physically, in terms of its park system. And that's the reality. And so I'm calling us out saying, don't let it happen again.
Thank you, Mayor. Any further comments, questions? Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Last piece on this, I think is a nice summary, but I believe Councilman Zapata would be very excited to see this happen, especially with the dog parks and the soccer field improvements. So,
Thank you for that comment, yes.
absolutely something he was very serious for.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
Just
Leatherman.
one closing comment. Taylor Smith and Jimmy Yanolovich are both back there. They've been working on this plan for the past few months and getting the recommendations together, working with their team out in the field on the financing side, not only to tackle the $2.5 million that the mayor and council prioritized, but then looking at the other maintenance items that we needed to do and strategizing on the park system as a whole for that $1.2 million, and what are we missing that we need to dedicate, and that's where that other 473 comes from, is prioritizing our park system as a whole and finding those efficiencies that as we have contractors out in the field, what can we do now to improve those parks and facilities even beyond just the $2.5 million, but then taking that up to $3 million as they strategize on the overall plan. And so my gratitude to both of them and their work in getting this built out to bring it to you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Leatherman. This was for review and guidance of staff's recommendations. Do you need anything further from Mayor and Council?
Not unless you have any other comments.
Mayor and Council, assume by virtue of comments made that you are in agreement with recommendations as put forward? Yes, okay. All right. I'll ask for a motion. So we can, we'll have that for the record.
Put it in the record, then I'll have it.
Yes, we'll have it for the record, yes. Motion by Councilmember Morthland, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you all very much. Thank you. All right. Under transportation, item number 10, consideration to approve the Riverside Road concept. Mr. Dave Cox. And Nicholas.
Okay, well, good evening. We're here to talk about the Riverside Road concept, and just to give you some background on this, this was a committee item at our June committee meeting almost 3 months ago, and at that time, the TAC was newly formed at that time, and they requested a deferral of this item so that they could take a review at it, take a deep dive on the concept and design of it, and they were very helpful in looking at it over July during their meeting, and they provided us some comments in August, which we brought to the mayor and council at a work session just over a month ago. And then this came back to committee about 3 weeks ago, and staff were tasked with setting up a meeting between the TAC, or members of the TAC, and Bike Roswell to gain some more consensus on some of the items being discussed. So we're here tonight at the request of mayor and council.
Okay, I'm familiar with that, but I didn't know we had progressed to a stage that we were prepared to present. From the last information, there was some good meeting, good contact, but I didn't know that had been further deliberated.
Yes, we had a meeting with members of the TAC and Bike Roswell approximately 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Yes, so we were tasked to bring this back to the admin committee this evening to present those findings and present the draft concept as it currently stands for your input.
Yeah, but I thought there was follow-up meetings after that, the meeting between TAC and Bike Roswell, and that there was some further discussion and deliberation, but I didn't know that had been settled. I guess is what I'm asking.
Is there a desire by members of the committee to perhaps defer this item
I don't know.
or to
Sorry,
move
what
this-
now?
So there had been that meeting and some good progress. I think actually is worth it to present and discuss. And I see we have a representative from Bike Roswell here and a representative from RTAC here. And so I think the way, it's my impression that actually there's been some great progress and some, I think, some great compromise. And I think an improved project for all different viewpoints is my impression. So I'd like to I think it'd be helpful to present that and see that.
You think, I mean, I'm with you, I thought it still needed some more, there were still some negotiations that needed to take place between parties.
So I think it's my impression on what staff's gonna show is gonna be that it has some input from RTAC as well as input from Bike Roswell on accomplishing multiple different goals.
Defer.
Okay. Are we ready to move forward?
Yes, sir.
Presentation, okay, all right, please.
I'll proceed. Thank you.
Proceed, sir. Yes.
Okay, just to go back in some background on the project itself, the Riverside Road Corridor has been a project we've been looking at for multiple years. It was recommended in the Bike Pit Master Plan that was adopted by Mayor and Council almost 3 years ago. At that time, it recommended sidewalks, a multi-use trail, and bike lanes along the corridor. The project was selected. It was one of the first projects we put on the list for the T-SPLOS referendum last year, which was approved by the voters last November. Again, the scope of the project outlined in T-SPLOS was very similar, multi-use trails, sidewalks, bike lanes, with some intersection improvements tacked on. And the budget allocated for T-SPLOS was about $8.7 million. Staff had already kind of kicked off some of the efforts earlier this year. You might recall we had some public outreach in March. We had a meeting down at the Catholic Church on the corridor. We had a virtual public meeting, and we had an online survey that had around 200 or so respondents that ran earlier this spring. One of the questions that came up when we spoke to Mayor and Council 3 weeks ago was some of the responses or some of the public input on the bike lanes and the sidewalk located along the north side of Riverside Road. You can see those are two of the higher scoring weighted averages from the survey respondents, along with some of the other factors. So I just wanted to point that out as that was a talking point from 3 weeks ago. This was our original concept that staff developed after doing the public outreach this spring. I won't go into detail, but it included 2 roundabouts, the bike lanes, multi-use trails, and sidewalks, along with some median islands for traffic calming purposes. After we spoke with the TAC in July and August, they submitted their draft recommendations for consideration. I'm not going to go through these one by one, but I will go through what some of the conversation was 2 weeks ago in an effort to see what middle ground or consensus could be reached. So I'm just going to go through these one by one. I have these little boxes or little bubbles here in orange for the TAC and RDOT's comments in the blue. So originally you saw 2 roundabouts proposed there. The TAC said they wanted to remove one of the roundabouts, as there was previously one recommended here near the Ace Sand Company. Staff came back and we did a little horse trading. We decided, well, we want to get rid of the roundabout here as it had some minor impacts to the Ace Sand Company. But we said, let's keep this roundabout here. So we just basically swapped the recommendation between the TAC and what staff had proposed. So there was some concurrence on that. What the TAC had originally proposed was the roundabout here, but instead we decided to substitute it with the traffic signal. And after a discussion 2 weeks ago, there was some consensus on those fronts there. So we have a traffic signal that is existing today, a roundabout would be proposed here, and then a new traffic light at the entrance to Ace Sand Company. As we move further to the east, the TAC had recommended possibly a pedestrian crossing near River Landing Drive. Staff concurs with that. There was some agreement there to add a pedestrian crosswalk along with the Hawk signal. The Hawk signal is very similar to what you have out here on Highway 9 leading over to Canton Street from City Hall. It's a pedestrian activated crosswalk. The TAC also wanted to recommend a new traffic signal at the entrance to Don White Park. Staff weighed in and said that that was not really needed based on there's no crash history there and also would likely not meet signal warrants. We did talk to the TAC a little more in depth and said if something were to come up in the future, that could be added at a later date. I mean, it's not completely off the table, but staff will certainly keep an eye on that. And if the need ever arises, we could add a traffic light down the road if it was necessary. So moving on into, those are kind of the low-hanging fruit items. We're going to move into some of the sidewalk and multi-use trail recommendations they had next. So the TAC had a couple comments here. They talked about possibly removing the sidewalks along the north side of Riverside Road because a lot of the pedestrian elements would be on the south side. We were a little hesitant on that given the bike ped plan findings in our project that we had developed, and I'll show you that in just a second. They also talked about removing the multi-use trail up here on the north side of Riverside, going over towards Dogwood Road. And they also suggested maybe removing the multi-use trail on this part of Riverside Road leading under 400. So staff had some discussions with them. We recommended we could remove the multi-use trail here, but we said maybe we should downgrade it to at least a sidewalk and keep the sidewalks running the entire length of the project. So you'd have a 5-foot sidewalk running basically from Riverside Park all the way to Dogwood. There are some also plans regarding another project to install a sidewalk or multi-use trail leading up the hill, going up Dogwood, going up to Grimes Bridge. So we want to make sure there was a nice tie-in there. The one variable is there's some effort underway to look at the possibility of connecting any multi-use trail here at the intersection of Dogwood and connecting it down through the woods to the existing trail that goes to the wooded area there that's a paved asphalt trail. There's some ADA stuff we need to look at. We still have to flush that out. So if that can be worked out successfully, then staff agrees we could remove the multi-use trail along Riverside here. So there could be some cost savings there. You wouldn't have duplicate efforts. So there was partial agreement here. So it wasn't 100%, but there was some headway made here regarding the sidewalks and multi-use trail. The third and final thing had a lot of discussion, and it has to do with the recommendation for the bike lanes and how they're presented, whether they're either on street or if they're some kind of barrier separated system. The TAC had proposed a bikeway path. Some people call it a cycle track. Some people call it barrier separated or buffer separated bike lanes. They had talked about making it a separate bike path, basically from Don White Park, or the portion that's under 400, around and coming all the way down closer to Riverside Park. Staff had originally recommended keeping the bike lanes on the roadway with a 4-foot bike lane and a 2-foot buffer. We did amend our original proposal because on our original concept, we only had a 4-foot bike lane on the eastbound side with a 2-foot buffer. And on the westbound side, we only had the bike lane without the buffer. We have since amended that to have a buffer on both sides, and what you're going to see in just a moment. And there was a lot of discussion about this, and we reached out to Bike Roswell was in the room, and they had a couple different concepts, but the one they wanted to focus on was if you do the painted buffer, which here, I'll put that on the screen. This is kind of what it would look like. They were suggesting we have the 2-foot painted buffer with maybe not really a barrier separated, but something that would kind of allow drivers to be, more careful, either rumble strips, putting them along the edge line, and that's the white line closest to the cars right here. That we also talked about the options for maybe raised pavement markers. Those are those reflective markers you see on the roads at nighttime. They don't light up, but they reflect your headlights. But more importantly, that's a raised surface. So if you're in your vehicle and you depart your travel lane, you hit them. Like when you're on the interstate, you change lanes, you hear that ba-bump, ba-bump. That alerts the driver you're getting out of the lane. So those are two things we could put in. Some Bike Roswell members suggested another thing called bot dots, which are similar to raised pavement markers. They just don't have the reflective aspect to it. So these are just different things you could put on there to make sure vehicles stay in their lane. And it also gives kind of an audio warning to cyclists. So if you're riding your bike in the bicycle lane and you hear that noise from a car hitting a rumble strip or one of these markers, it kind of gives you an auditory clue that, hey, there might be something happening behind me. I need to look and check it out to make sure I'm not in any danger. One of the concerns with having a barrier separated was there were concerns about if the bike lane was ever blocked by debris or after a storm. Sometimes there's branches down or twigs. The bikers wanted to make sure they could, safely get around any obstacles if they were there and get into the travel lane and get back into the bike lane. So these were kind of the things we had talked about. There was not 100% consensus on this when we left the room, but we did have a healthy conversation on it 2 weeks ago. So I wanted to brief the mayor and council on that. Here's a cross-section and top-down view of the corridor of what staff is recommending. Again, it's the same thing you saw. The only difference is you have the Maltese Trail over here and the sidewalk. And then we also included, where applicable, I think the TAC recommended a kind of a fence or a decorative wooden fence. If you've been over on Azalea Drive to the west of Highway 9, going towards like the Nantahala Outpost, they have that nice wooden fence between the roadway and the Maltese Trail. That would be a feature we could include just for a little separation between the bike lane and the Maltese Trail, just for a kind of an aesthetic feature. So this is kind of what staff's recommendation is at this point in time, and of course we're open to further discussion and comments. So just in closing, we agreed on many of the items that the TAC had, but we're still keeping the bike lanes, or recommending the bike lanes be on the roadway with a 2-foot painted buffer, and either an option for rumble strips, raised pavement markers, or something along the edge line of the roadway. And if this is approved by mayor and council, the next steps would be to bring a task order before you sometime in the next 45 days, probably in October. And then as the design of the project moves forward, we determine cost and affordability of these different designs. But we anticipate these options would be under or within the established budget outlined in the T-SPOS program of the $8.7 million. So Mr. Chairman, I'll yield for questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
Excellent, thank you. So I have some comments and some questions. So first off, I think Mr. Cox, I think you did a good job of summarizing where there was the concern and contention among different stakeholders. And so it's my impression that basically can we actually go back to, so yeah, I think so if I'm looking at the top-down picture, just that this was something where it seemed like it meet the needs and interest of both Bike Roswell and you're hearing differently.
No, Christine was asking me a question,
Oh,
sorry.
okay, no problem, yes. So basically what this is doing is first of all, it's separating more for safety's sake between the bicycle riders and the cars, and not adding the potential danger for the faster bicycle riders by adding the different raised type things, and at the same time by having the rumble strips and the bots dots or what you call them. That's creating where it's incentivizing or ensuring that cars are going to be in their specific lane and driving at a more appropriate pace. So from that standpoint, that's something where I think it seems like it's accomplishing. I guess my questions are twofold. So first of all, by having the 4-foot bicycle lanes, is that meeting the different requirements out there of different transportation requirements for it to be a true official safe bicycle lane?
Yes, so the minimum width for a bicycle lane is at 4 feet. If you're going to sign it, mark it with the pavement markings like you see here on the graphic, it has to be a minimum of 4 feet. There's no exception to that. Anything less than that, we just call that a paved shoulder.
Okay.
We have a lot of those around the city. A lot of people mistake them for bike lanes, but they might only be 2.5, 3 feet wide. They look wide enough for a bicyclist, but they're really not designated as a bike lane.
Okay, but so these are minimum 4 feet, and by being minimum 4 feet, that is making it a true official bike lane?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. That was the first question. The second question is, so you have proposed at the moment 2-foot buffer, and I guess just my question is, dependent on the amount of right-of-way and other logistics, is there the opportunity to make the buffer even wider?
Well, there's always an option to make it wider. You just run the risk of having more conflicts. We have to consider construction easements. We have to consider utilities. There's different things. It's definitely possible, but it can increase the risk of the project, and that can potentially drive up the cost. We're hopeful. I mean, if you're only talking a few feet, I don't think that would be a deal breaker, but it was something we'd have to look at more in depth.
Okay, and so because basically from this standpoint, unless different stakeholders speak up and hear differently, to my understanding, my preference is as long as the different stakeholders are supporting it, I think we move forward with this. I would like to see as a part of it, just for staff to look at the potential of making the buffer bigger and seeing that as a possibility. But that's something where I wouldn't want to slow us down for that, because it does seem like we have a good compromise here. So this was the major area of contention. Can we go back to one of the original slides that shows the different details? Because I want to discuss the thought process behind the multi-use trail a little more, because I want to make sure that we are making multi-use trails available on Riverside and that it would connect all the way through, et cetera. So help me walk through, if we were to have on the north side just a regular sidewalk and not a multi-use trail, how would someone from the east side of Riverside to all the way to Azalea, what would their multi-use trail path be? And would they have a multi-use trail without having just an area where they, without having an area where they didn't have a multi-use trail?
Do you want to take this one, Greg? I want to, you're coming from this direction, coming under 400 and going this way?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So Greg, please correct me if I'm misstating this, but I believe there could be a tie-in here underneath the Georgia 400 bridge. There's already an asphalt trail that goes along, not on the roadway, but through the wooded area up here, and it curves into Don White Park, and it goes into the park system. And it ties in here, and then it winds through this area, and then it would pick up in this area where we would add it in. This that orange here. Yeah. And please forgive me that this roundabout is no longer here, so don't hold that. That hasn't been updated. This was our original concept from 3 months ago. The multi-use trail would be added basically along the frontage of the church and in the western part of East Sand, and then it would tie in down here closer to Riverside Park, and we would make sure it connects into the existing trail system here. And then, as you know, the trail system, once you get into Riverside Park, winds around and crosses Vickery Creek on a pedestrian bridge. It goes under Highway 9 and goes over and links up with Azalea Drive.
So
that's already existing today.
Thank you for answering that. So actually, I guess let me ask the question a little differently. So you just explained, I believe, the potential of the modified RTAC type version. But let's assume that if we were to keep the multi-use trail plan the same today, we don't change it from the plan that you had last month. What is the multi-use trail path look from that standpoint? And then help me understand what the changes are if we do take some of these changes into consideration.
Yeah, so the biggest question for us was up at the Dogwood and Riverside intersection. We are showing it right now. Again, this was in the June draft concept. We were showing it along Riverside from the intersection here going west to this first crossing, pedestrian crossing, and that was mainly due to grades and because it's a little hard to see, like Dave said, that the existing paved trail is right along here on the southern side, and so there's a gap. So we were showing that northern piece, but then we were also showing the southern piece along Riverside, because we don't know, we need a little bit more survey information to see if we can make this connection right here.
So
if we can make that, then the orange piece here could go away, and the orange piece right here could go away.
And thank you for reminding me, because I remember there were some aspects you were uncertain on because of information needed. What I believe is very important is that there will be a multi-use trail that connects, that goes all the way down, understanding at certain times, just as we've done in the past, as staff recommended with hard scrabble and other locations, there's certainly the opportunity to have a safe, lighted crossing. But I just don't want there to be a place where not only is there no lighted crossing, but just basically there's a large amount of space where there's no multi-use trail. There absolutely, as per the bike ped master plan, there needs to be that connection. But you just reminded me that staff is not fully certain because of the surveying and other details you need to make the recommendations there.
This was also done just a little bit before the Grimes Bridge stuff. We have a little bit more information now on Grimes Bridge and Dogwood and this multi-use trail. We are pretty sure it's going to come down on the west side on Dogwood in this location. So that's a little bit of reasoning why this was still a little bit of a question back in June.
And so, with that, given that, I believe there's, just some great input from stakeholders. I mentioned what it would be important to me to see for the road, as well as just knowing that although staff needs some more information, which you'd get through surveys, et cetera, as long as there's a multi-use trail connecting all points and there's a sidewalk at all points, that's something I'd support. I'd ask this committee considers if any representatives from RTAC or Bike Roswell had any words to say, I would request you consider giving that opportunity this evening. But those are all my comments, and would love to hear from this committee.
Yes, Councilmember Hall.
I just have a clarifying question. I'm a little bit unclear as to the multi-use trail, the orange trail that goes underneath 400, and is that going away? I'm sorry, I'm not following the conversation all the way.
So there's the existing Maltese Trail through the woods right here, and we may be able to tie into that and link the other pieces of it together. I believe that's what Councilmember Palermo is. He wants to make sure there's a continuation of Maltese trails all connecting in that area to some degree. If we can make the connection happen here, we could go with the tax recommendation to remove this portion here, so you wouldn't have duplicated Maltese trails right in this area. I believe there would be some kind of connection right here to link where this parking lot is, because one of the important things of the bike ped plan is we're trying to link our riverfront trails to the Big Creek Greenway. And we already have a great Maltese trail in Old Alabama, which leads to the northeast from
Right, that's my point, and it's on the south side.
Yes, we're not gonna leave a gap there.
Okay, so it'd be a south side trail that's along Riverside all the way to Eves, I guess.
It wouldn't go to Eves. There's the traffic light right here at Old Alabama and Riverside. We would likely cross there and link into the existing trail on Old Alabama that goes up the hill.
Oh, okay, but there is a multi-use trail along Riverside that goes to Eves, is there not, on the south side?
There's a gravel trail, but there's a sidewalk on Riverside leading along the river to the southeast towards Eves. It's not continuous. There are some gaps in those sidewalks, especially as you get closer to
Over the bridges,
road.
there's gaps.
There's some gaps because the river gets really close to the curb. It's very challenging to build that. And then once you get very close to Eves, there's some gravel pathways that the pedestrians use pretty frequently. It's passable, but it's not ideal.
So this is gonna go up Old Alabama on the west side?
Well, the trail's already there today. The Maltese trail's there. It's kind of
coming down from Old
underutilized because it's this very steep hill. And but the idea is it goes up to the fire station at Market Boulevard. And we have other T-SPOS projects that will build a Maltese trail from the fire station to Holcomb Bridge to Big Creek Park. Okay. And that's kind of the ultimate goal of bridging our two assets of the Big Creek and the riverfront.
Thank you.
All right. Mayor Wilson.
Sorry, Dave. Thank you for a great job as always. To my colleagues, I'm a little confused. So it sounds like we have not followed the process that we created. So I think, honestly, we're ahead of ourselves in the conversation. By creating TAC, right, TAC was created to give us advice and consult, not to negotiate with RDOT, not to negotiate with stakeholders. To me, this process sounds a little bit out of whack. Sounds like RDOT created a plan. RTAC has some comments on that plan. Those comments should come to council and through a consultant advice process, right? If stakeholders in the community want to weigh in, they should weigh into council, right? But it sounds like the process is, to me, a little inverted here and not particularly a great model going forward. So I'm a little uncomfortable looking at this because I truly don't know what TAC's full recommendations are. I truly don't know what the stakeholders' perspectives on this are. I do want to know what RDOT is. What RDOT believes, what they want, boom, we want to see that, right? But then I think we'll say, look, RTAC has given us this counsel and advice. It's kind of our job to kind of negotiate that with the stakeholders and RTAC and RDOT, really not RTAC, RDOT, and stakeholders. And so I would say this process is maybe a little bit out of whack right now, and I'm a little uncomfortable with that, and it's probably a bad precedent going forward for us to set up a successful model of using RTAC successfully. And because we're accountable to the stakeholders, right? And we have to tell the stakeholders, yes, we agree with you, or no, we don't agree with you, or we're going to incorporate some of your ideals and not going to incorporate some of our ideals. And I really think it's unfair for RDOT, quite frankly, to be in the middle of all this. It's kind of our job. So I don't know if I'm really cool with us going, so yeah, let's sign off on this tonight, because I think the process is a little inverted. That's just my 2 cents.
Yes, Councilmember Palermo.
So I agree. So I think the process, and given that this is I'd argue probably a first time, given that the RTAC is so new, I certainly agree with that, and I agree it should not be RDOT's responsibility to be in the middle of it. So I think that's an accurate and fair statement. I'd say, although probably not the most efficient process, I'd say I feel the stakeholders have spoke to council in the sense through, not an official sense, of course, just really being as residents and representatives from their organization. And same thing with RTAC. RTAC obviously officially spoke to council, which is what started this discussion. And then RTAC more recently with, having one of the representatives here, I feel they have, and that's where what gives me comfort is I feel there has been the weigh-in, and it's ultimately council's decision. And I'll tell you right now, I certainly didn't agree with everything from the RTAC, nor did I agree with everything from the stakeholders. But at the same time, I feel, if anything, that works out well, because I feel actually it brought a good compromise, which is I think really addressing the biggest concern that RTAC had, as well as addressing the biggest concerns that some stakeholders had. So I feel good with the product, but I couldn't agree more that this certainly should not be the model going forward.
Yes. Mike, thank you. The only reason I say it is probably the most significant thing that I saw from the RTAC's recommendations, I don't see here. So I'm not so sure that it has been reconciled. And I think that ultimately is a decision this body has to make, is they have to reconcile that. And it feels like, to defend RTAC, that they had to reconcile that. I think that needs to be decided by the committee. Like, ultimately, the committee needs to see, because there's a significant suggestion made by RTAC, which I know the stakeholders said, please don't do that, right? So it sounds like the decision was kind of politically made by another body, not by this body. And so that's why I would say, really, this body needs to see it up there and say no, or yes, or let's negotiate that. And so I don't see that up there. I kind of see the negotiation that's taking place at the RDOT piece, but I don't see the negotiation that's taking place. We're looking at a negotiated document. And honestly, the negotiation should take place at the committee level, in my opinion. Because I think if this body saw the RTAC commissions up, the recommendations, and they saw the stakeholders' recommendations, it might be a more interesting perspective and conclusion at the end of the day. Don't know what that would be. Right. So I'm going to make this crazy suggestion. We defer this.
And I would be seconding that motion if you can consider, can we defer this to the committee on the 11th? So basically 1 month, because what I'd want to be 100% positive is that at that meeting, we should be moving something forward and absolutely having a plan that RDOT is then ready to run with.
Yes.
That's where my concern is, if we were to try to just do it 2 weeks, the risk of there not being just staff ready or whomever ready for a finished product. That'd just be my request for your consideration.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, yes, Councilmember Vanstrom.
Before we leave this, since we have these nice pictures, can I ask a couple questions? Number one, can you do us a favor and check the buffer on Azalea? Is that 2 feet, 3 feet, or you may already know that?
There is no buffer on Azalea.
Well, you've got the fence and you've got plants, and that
You're talking
separate
about
the bikers.
You're talking about the grass buffer?
Well, there's the bike lane, and then there's the fence with some plants, and then there's the multimodal use. multi-use trail on Azalea?
I believe the bike shoulder, I don't know if it's a full bike lane, but it's very close to 4 feet. If it's not 4 feet, it might be just under that. And then the grass buffer there, it varies, but it's usually a minimum 4 to 5 feet. That's where the wooden fence is currently. And then beyond that, you have the multi-use trail.
So it's 4 to 5 feet?
In some areas, not the entire width. It varies a little bit depending on where you are, between where the boardwalk peels off, by the NOC outpost, by the river house. It widths, but it's not that wide.
Well,
Some areas it's
the
wider,
proposal,
some
the
it's
proposal
some of it's narrower.
what's the buffer here? What was that?
Just
2
a
feet.
point of clarification. Are you asking how wide the bike shoulder is
I'm
on
asking
Azalea?
how wide the fence and the foliage that is between the bike lane and the walkway.
The grass shoulder area where the wooden fence is, it varies. But at
Right.
the
No, I-
narrowest point, I believe it's 4 to 5 feet.
Wow.
Wider in some areas.
He's like me, he's going,
That's
he walks
wider,
that all the
that's
time.
wider than I thought. I'm on
Yeah.
that all the time. That's wider than I thought. And I was coming back to Councilman Palermo's conversation. So how wide is the proposal here?
So the proposal that, if we go to the, further to the right, keep on going to that, keep on going where there's the 2 pictures, right here. So this is a 4-foot bike lane and then a 2-foot shoulder before the cars. And that 2
No,
foot.
you're going, go the other way.
Are you talking about the grass shoulder?
Go the other way. Yes, towards the walkway.
Here? So this is the grass shoulder between what the fence would be and the Maltese trail. But the Maltese trail varies along the corridor. Some areas it's right near the roadway, some areas it wanders kind of further into the park space. So that's why we have it, it says varies here, because it's not the same throughout the corridor. It's almost a mile long.
What does it vary from, 2 to 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet?
Are you talking about on Azalea or on this area?
On this one here.
Honestly,
where it says
on this
varies.
stretch, it is further, once you get past like East Sand, it is further away from the road. It could be 10 to 20 feet from the roadway.
It's closest near the church, I believe.
Yeah, near the church.
Yes.
Up to East Sand is where it's the closest, and then it kind of peels off.
Okay.
You talk,
Because you're gonna be utilizing the existing that's there already. Or are you building
Yes.
a new?
Yeah,
Oh,
most
okay, well, that drops way down. Okay, that's fantastic. And then the other picture that just went off, on the top down, the westbound bikers that are on the north side of the road, I have a question about that. So the left side, you have a 5-foot sidewalk, and then you have a contiguous to the bike plate. There's no division between the sidewalk and the, no
So,
buffer?
Again, this is the westbound direction. I kind of had to put this in here just so it would fit. So this cyclist here is traveling westbound. Yeah, you have a sidewalk, it'd be 5 feet wide. You have a 2-foot grass strip behind the curb and gutter. Then
Okay.
you have your 4-foot bike lane, your 2-foot buffer, and then your travel.
Okay, but you do have it, it's not like the bikers are gonna ride right up onto the sidewalk. That's all I want
That's
to
correct.
correct.
Yeah, they would have 4 feet to themselves.
Okay,
And-
fantastic.
Yes,
Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
And so for the next discussion too, I think it would be important for a representative from the fire department to be here, because a challenge with the original RTAC proposal is there was discussion whether 20 feet or 26 feet is required for the 2 travel lanes. And what the fire department later weighed in was that 20 feet is allowed and supported under the fire department when there's no fire hydrants. And when there are fire hydrants, that's when 26 feet is required, which is where a concern came as well with the RTAC version, whereas in this compromise here would address the concerns and needs of the fire department, but from a philosophical and process standpoint, it makes total sense. That should be a discussion we're absolutely having with this committee.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Just real quick, while we're talking about the installation of the rumble strips and the bot dots, or whatever they're called, is that a continuous implementation, or are they broken up?
That is yet to be determined. We could put rumble strips or bot dots or the raised pavement markers, or we could put a combination of those things in. That would probably be sorted out during the design process. I don't know if they'd be the entire length or they'd be kind of sporadic. You know, you'd have a few rumble strips, then a break, then a few more. You see that in some places, or some places it's continuous.
Sure.
That'd be sorted out at a later date.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, it seems that there was a desire to defer this to the October 11th committee meeting. Does anyone want to place that in the form of a motion? Motion by Councilmember Palermo. Is there a second? Second by Mayor Wilson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? And approves, and that will be deferred to October 11th committee. This then does conclude the Administration and Finance and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting for this evening. And subsequent to, or preceding our other committee meeting for this evening, I'll ask for an adjournment for this meeting. Motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Hills. All in favor? All right, thank you very much. Would anyone like to entertain a 5-minute break before our next committee meeting? All right. 5-minute break before our next committee meeting. Is that good, everybody? 5 minutes, 5, not 6. month in City Council chambers at 7:00 p.m. in the regularly scheduled City Council meetings, and on the second and fourth Monday of each month, the fifth Monday of each month at open forum. We do encourage citizens to engage our online platforms and to seek information from our staff who will be responsive to you. In addition, we encourage you to utilize the city's web service portal as a mechanism to report issues or concerns, and to visit our city website for meetings, events, and activities happening in the city of Roswell. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting. Excuse me.
God bless you.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee meeting for August 9th, 2022. I will entertain a motion of approval.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Hills, second by Councilmember Morthland. All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Mr. Knighton,
Yes, ma'am.
point of personal privilege.
Yes, please.
I would just like to, before we head into public safety and fire and police, to acknowledge Roswell High School's installation for the 9/11, Project 9/11 recognition. And I say, not only for the sake of our first responders and all those we lost, I want to say thank you to our fire department for each year since inception of this program at Roswell High School, coming to water the lawn, which I fondly refer to as Beirut, which allows the ground to be softened so that the students can bore a hole that the flag may be inserted. So thank you for that, even it may not have been exactly you fellas. I've met most of you every single year, and it means a lot to our community to have that kind of support and display and recognition in our city. Of course, our police take care of what's going on over there when people do stroll through and reflect. So just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention and say thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our first responders and fire department and staff for being connected to the community in a very tangible way. Thank you. Item number 2, under public safety fire, is the consideration of a resolution to adopt the 2022 Fulton County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Deputy Chief Troche is here. Thank you.
See if I have any luck with this mic. Thank you, Mr. Knighton.
Sure.
If you would entertain me for just a second before I get started on the resolution, I'd like to introduce, for those that haven't met, Deputy Chief Shane Dobson. He's the newest addition to the Roswell Fire Department command staff. You're going to be seeing quite a bit of him, almost 3 decades of service in public safety, and the fire department came to us from DeKalb after 24 years of service? 26 years of service with DeKalb. We're happy to have him. He's going to be a great contributor to everything we do, so just wanted to formally introduce you. So I'm going to read verbatim to capture the intent of this resolution. Just a couple of things on here. The resolution is for the City of Roswell to adopt the 2022 Fulton County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is pursuant to the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 that basically says that if we want to be eligible for federal grant money, we have to do this. So it provides a legal framework for Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, planning requirements for the state, local, and tribal government as a condition of mitigation for grant assistance. So I think it's important to put that out there because that pretty much catches the essence of what this mitigation plan allows us to do, is to be able to put in for grant funding with FEMA. The Atlanta Fulton County Emergency Management Agency serves as the leading coordinating agency for mitigation planning and coordinates the hazard mitigation plan. I think this is also important because we have to understand that Fulton County Emergency Management Agency is who coordinates this entire effort, and it just includes the cities that are captured within Fulton County. And AFCEMA, by County Code Chapter 130, as it's stated in here, is designated as the Emergency Management Agency for Fulton County. All those things I think are very important. So what we're doing is we're putting a resolution in for Roswell to adopt this mitigation plan, which takes the entire county and looks at the county and what hazards may be present. It breaks it down into the cities. So of course, the city of Roswell has its mitigation plan included in here, which is what are our risks within the city. It notes those, and we have 11 noted hazards in there, and it categorizes them from, occasional, highly likely, and it's, I don't want to call it generic, but these are the normal hazards that you would expect in an assessment: dam failure, droughts, earthquake, floods, and so on. Then what it does, it gives us some actions, and we are not bound to anything. It is just us looking at, hey, if something happened, what are some measures that we can take preventative and to deal with those possible hazards? So again, what we're doing is we are adopting this plan. It happens every 5 years. So every 5 years, you should be adopting a new plan. And the idea of it is that we have the ability to put in for grant funding, federal grant funding, in the case something was to take place.
All right.
Take any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Troche. Any questions or comments for the Deputy Chief? Yes, Mayor Wilson?
Well, I think the only question we have is unfortunately the new deputy chief that's joined us, DeKalb County, did it have something to do, are we going to have as bad a results with him as we've had with Jim Conroy, who also came from DeKalb County? That's our only real question of the day, I think, in relation to all this. That's what I thought.
All right.
No, Pavel, thank you. It's an excellent presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or discussion? Or certainly we'll entertain a motion to move this item forward.
Motion to move this item forward.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Hills, for the motion. Do we have second? Second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, now under Public Safety Police, consideration of a resolution to accept the 2022 Burn Discretionary Grant and Budget Amendment 22132101-09-26-22 to set up the grant in the amount of $12,000 and a total project budget of $26,312. Chief Conroy.
Thank you. I should get the employee referral bonus for Deputy Chief Johnson.
It might work the other way, Chief.
That's true. I might have to pay a penalty. So this is a grant in the amount of $12,000 with matching funds from the city in the amount of $14,312 for a total project budget of $26,312. This is acceptance of the grant of the 2022 Burn Discretionary Community Project Funding Grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance. The funds will be used to enhance our Citizens Police Academy, which is one of our most popular community outreach efforts, correct? One of our graduates who's seated next to me. It'll be used to purchase supplies, equipment, and audiovisual equipment for the Citizens Police Academy. This was one of those items we submitted when we submitted the 911 request through Congresswoman Lucy McDonald's office.
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second by motion to approve by Councilmember Palermo, second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion or question? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. The next item we have is under the category of Public Works, and we've entertained. If there is no objection from the committee, the Public Works Director has requested that we move item number 7 first, if that's okay, and we'll discuss item number 7 as the first item under Public Works. Okay. All right. With that, Ms. Sharon Heiso.
Thank you. So this evening I'm bringing some good news to you regarding the Community Water Fluoridation Program. That is a program that is administered through the Georgia Rural Water Association. They come out and visit us periodically, and they are gathering information about our fluoride usage and in order to generate an annual report on our system. In April, they visited our water plant and worked with Andy Hamby, who is sitting here next to me, our assistant plant manager, and they noted that we had upgraded our fluoride system since they had been last out. At the time, they started to talk about what the possibility would be for a reimbursement for that work. So Andy worked very hard to pull all of that information together and submitted that in June to the Georgia Rural Water Association. And in August, we received a check for $21,089.99. And so I just really want to take a moment to recognize Andy for taking the initiative to do this and to go out of his way to make that happen, fitting that into all of his other duties, and just noting that Andy, more than anyone, appreciates what $21,000 does in the water utility. And I just wanted to publicly thank him for that. And also just suggest that maybe Andy would like to present a copy of this check to you, and maybe you'd like to shake his hand, Mayor, because he's one of the best and the brightest in environmental public works. Oh, wait, we're getting a picture. Turn around and get a picture. Thanks, Andy.
It's awesome, yes. Andy, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Izo, do we need an additional formal action? Yes. Correct. Right,
Okay, vote on
yes.
it?
Yes, in order to accept the reimbursement.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to accept this check of $21,089.99
Thank you. Thank you. Motion by Mayor Wilson, second by Councilmember Hall. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, we'll go back to item number 4, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a change order with Burns and McDonnell for construction phase services on the solid waste transfer station for an amount not to exceed $68,920. Ms. Izo.
Thank you. So Burns McDonnell has been working with us on the transfer station since the concept phase. They provided the design services for us and have been working with us during the construction phase to provide resident inspection and contract management for us. As you know, the transfer station completion has been delayed due to some challenges the contractor has experienced to the tune of almost 6 months now. And during that time, Burns & Mac has continued to support us, and these kinds of services are very much dictated by schedule as far as how much time that they need to be able to put forward. So this is a change order that will get us through the end of October, which is when we expect to be realizing completion up at the transfer station, for them to continue working with us and support us through this phase of the project.
Yes, Mayor Wilson.
This is a great example of the leadership of the city council, of Lee, Will, Peter, Michael, and Christine. It's a great example of the leadership of Sarah Izo and Randy Knighton. And I think it's David Davidson, it's the city's historian, who could probably attest. This is a great example of where this leadership of the city, underneath Sharon's leadership and Randy's leadership and this council's leadership, is ahead. You're going to have problems in life. Forgive me, you're going to have problems. And one of the questions in life is individually and organizationally, how do you respond to problems? And this is a great example where, because of the initiative and foresight and being on top of a problem well in advance, that this bad boy is not going to bite this city nor its residents in the butt. So thank you, Sharon, for being super transparent about this well in advance. Mr. Knighton, for your leadership, for the council's leadership of creating that change of culture, well done. And this is a great example of a problem that has been identified and has been quarantined and will be managed very successfully going forward. And the $68,920 will be reimbursed to the city through fees. So the unfortunate part is we are extending $68,920. That's not good. But the good news is you already got a plan to recoup that $68,920, and that is good, and that's because you've been on top of this from the get-go. And you have moved up the timetable since you identified the problem. So although we're 6 months behind, we're not nearly as behind as we could have been. We could have been significantly behind, if I would dare say, if we weren't on top of it. But you as leadership stayed on top of this problem and have made a significant difference in the potential outcome of this. So thank you.
Thank you, sir, Mayor Wilson. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Thank you. Ms. Isa, would you mind just clarifying the statement that the mayor just made for those listening about this recouping the money in fees?
Sure, absolutely.
Not resident fees.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to answer that. So as a part of this contract, there was a contract time that was stated when we undertook the project, and the contractor agreed to that. He has since experienced a number of delays. Some of them were justified, most of them were of his own cause. And so we have liquidated damages on this contract for every day that he misses his delivery date. At this point, we're 6 months out, which totals us out into upwards of, we're over $450,000 in damages right now. So at the end of the project, we have the opportunity, and we have been withholding payment. Also, there's a retainage aspect on this contract as well. And at the end of this project, there will be a negotiation, and the damages that the city has experienced, we will be reimbursed for.
Thank you for that clarification. All right. Any further comment or question? Seeing none, we'd entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Hills. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. Item number 5, consideration to submit an application to the Solid Waste Trust Fund Grant Program for an FY 2023 Recycling, Waste Reduction, and Diversion Grant. Ms. Iso? Mr. Watson?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Mr. Knighton. So EPW is seeking approval from Mayor and Council to apply for an FY23 Solid Waste Trust Fund Recycling, Waste Reduction, and Diversion Grant Award. This actually comes out through the Georgia Environmental Protection Division, Georgia EPD. This is a new grant. So the Recycling, Waste Reduction, and Diversion Grant was created as a part of the Solid Waste Trust Fund, and with a goal to reduce waste in Georgia, recover valuable materials, support manufacturing, and encourage innovation. So this is the first time they've put it out. It's a $2 million total grant that's, and they're kind of seeing basically what sort of response they're going to get. And they're incentivizing more of the infrastructure side of things. So they're not as much for education and programming. They're wanting to see what infrastructure they can get out of it. So our folks at the Roswell Recycling Center, they're seeking this grant for $50,750 for a polystyrene densifier. The city, to improve its chances, is going to potentially put up $20,000 of local matching funds. So the total project is about $70,750. The applications are due at the end of this month, and we expect to hear back notice of award in 4 months, although they have said that because this is new and they don't know what types of proposals they're going to get, that could be extended. So before I pass it over, your first question might be, what is a polystyrene densifier? I mean, so first off, let's break that down. The polystyrene is that packaging material that you get sometimes, if you buy TVs or things, and it's got that white hard plastic. Sometimes if you break it, it's not the popcorn stuff, so that's polystyrene. Polystyrene is about a 90% air in its component. So what a densifier does is it actually slowly melts it down into a more compact product. So basically it's a 90-to-1 reduction, and we're able to actually sell from the recycling center that material, which is a lot easier to pass off to a supplier than bags and bags of polystyrene. So.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
It is a must. Just in case you're wondering, last year we did about almost 6.5 tons of polystyrene at the recycling center. And this year, we're on course to actually do more than that, so.
All right, Councilmember Morthland, I believe you have a question.
So I believe it was just addressed. We do actually have one of these right now, and it is working. We're talking about doubling, if not going above double output.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we do have one. It's about half of the capacity. And when this was purchased 3 years ago, the idea was to see if it was going to be, number one, how much polystyrene we were going to get. When we got it, it was before the pandemic. And since the pandemic, with all of the online buying that has occurred and all the Amazon boxes that folks are getting, polystyrene at the recycling center has just shot up. So the amount of material that is going through that machine exceeds it, and there's a lot of time. So this machine is actually going to more than double the output. Now we just need to hope that we get more polystyrene, but it's going to be a much better machine for the folks at the recycling center.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mayor Wilson.
Brian, does that mean you'll keep both? You obviously, if you get the new one, you're obviously going to keep the old one.
We would like to keep both, yeah. If down the road we see that we don't need two, sure, but as of right now, the idea is to keep I think it's less than half the size of the footprint of the new one, and so it's not going to take up that much space.
But in the simplest terms, this $20,000 investment from Roswell residents does what? Like you'd say, like you're talking to residents, so look, we're investing $20,000, getting the new machine. This is what it does for the city.
That's a great question. I would say what it does is it's going to help. One of the things that we will want to do is we want to continue to promote the recycling center anyway, but we will want to promote the various materials that the recycling center does take. And I don't know if people really recognize that polystyrene is one of those items. And so being able to promote that it's going to be coming to the Roswell Recycling Center. And then the converse side is when you talk about polystyrene and it's 90% air, and we're able to compact that, that's taking a load of tonnage out of our landfills. So the big item is that it's really, reducing people now have a place of where to take it. It's reducing costs at the landfill, so
Brian, thank you. And the other thing is, Sharon, and you just buttress or correct everything I say wrong here, right? So one of the great things about the Roswell Recycling Program is in North Fulton County, if you're a resident of Roswell, you have got a fantastic recycling program at your curb and a place to deliver. You got a fantastic place to have product picked up at your curb site or at your apartment. You've got a great place for recycling to be picked up conveniently. And there's a massive amount of recycling products that can be put in there. And then there's other products, but we have our own recycling center that you can come bring. So it's a great investment, not only in the city currently, but in the city future-wise. And continuing to diminish or reduce the size of clutter and waste that goes into landfills is great foresight, matters to this community, matters to other communities. So it matters a lot. The $20,000 investment is continuing.
Seeing none, yes, Councilmember Morthland.
Real quick, correct me if I'm wrong, but the curbside recycling does not pick up styrofoam, or this product that we're talking about right here?
that is correct.
Okay, so for us to keep this out of the landfill, we would need to physically bring it to the recycling center and turn it over to our guys to do with this product.
That's
what they do, from my understanding, is they push it all down, they create a cube, and then that cube is sold to someone to recreate a product with, and that income comes to the city, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And what I've also been told is that this larger piece of equipment allows them to do it a little more quickly. So it's a little less manpower to be using this bigger machine than the smaller machine that we have. So it's also, we're always looking for how do we spend our man hours up there most efficiently. As you know, you've visited just recently.
Councilmember Hills.
For our residents who are recycling enthusiasts like me, our city picks up at Target, at Publix, I take mine there. No, who picks those? I need to change my ways.
No, those are their private haulers are picking up there. That is not us.
Let that be struck from the record that
Right.
Councilmember Hills is illegally.
This is Christine Hull speaking. We look a lot alike. Thank you for that.
All right, thank you for that clarification there. All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion to move this item forward. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Palermo. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 6, consideration to submit an application to the FY 2023 Glass Recycling Foundation Grant. Mr. Watson?
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is another grant. We actually found out about this just about a week and a half ago, so it's fairly new. And we've had several conversations with various council members about glass recycling. So this just seemed like a good opportunity, and we wanted to jump on it.
We've certainly heard from a number of residents on this. I'd like to motion to approve. Since it's a grant request, and we've certainly
It's a grant
heard.
request, but Mike, do you want to talk about this? Because it's amazing.
Well, so where residents had weighed in a lot, because most cities had actually stopped doing it, and so the fact that we've continued doing it curbside, but more importantly, to find additional ways to recycle is something that certainly a lot of people take pride in Roswell being such a green city. So I really appreciate you looking for grant opportunities, and hope we'll have support to move this forward to council.
Michael, it's a great, I mean, this is a great, sorry, it's 8 o'clock at night, it's 8:15.
8:14, yeah, but nobody's
8:14.
counting.
But I mean, that's one of the things that we don't talk about enough, like there's so many great things that, great foresight of leadership, where you guys continue to innovate, continue to try to find ways to be better. Like, we're all really, really good in the recycling program. Like, it's one of the things, like, we're much better than our sister cities. But you're not resting on the lead. You're continuing to innovate. You're continuing to find new ways to get better. And that's, like, amazing. It's so cool and fun to watch that. And our residents need to know that. Like, this is a great example of continuing to get better.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, absolutely. Any further discussion or further explanation needed?
Maybe just a little bit, just to make sure. Sorry, I probably should stop when I already have the.
Yeah, but you
vote, right?
should stop. No.
So I'm going to stop, yeah. We're excited about it too, so.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or explanation needed? All right, I will go ahead and accept the vote of approval to move this item forward. Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you. All right, sounds good. All right, next item, item number 8. Consideration, the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract change order with Gradeco Incorporated for stormwater on-call construction services in the amount of $500,000 and to award a task order for the Roundsville pipe replacement project in an amount not to exceed $326,337.
Okay.
Ms. Izo.
All right. So this project is the top project on our CIP list for this FY23 for $326,000. It's a pipe replacement for a 48-inch pipe that's collapsed. The reason this looks a little different than what you're accustomed to seeing, our on-call construction contracts have expired, and we're working under an extension right now. And so what we need to do is authorize a contract change order for the new dollar value, and then also incorporate some proposed unit prices that were a part of this bid. And that makes sense simply from the point of view of these contracts are over 3 years old and were negotiated prior to COVID, so you can certainly appreciate the challenges that we see with those unit prices. But this is one of our on-call contractors, Gradeco, that we've had a fantastic experience with, and have full confidence in them on this particular project.
Thank you, Ms. Izo. Any question? Yes, Mayor Wilson.
For the record, should we even ask about Chatfield?
Well, I can explain what happened there. So when this project initially went out, the on-call contractors that were listed to do this type of work didn't all receive notice. Chatfield was the only one in that particular grouping that was qualified to do this work. They turned in a bid, and you saw that bid was closer to $400,000. And when we realized what had happened, we had to send this back out for bid to the other contractors that were qualified. And when it went out the second time, Chatfield chose not to bid, and Great Coast bid was actually less than when Great Coast was the first time around. So,
Do we know why Chatfield, though, on the second go-around decided not to rebid?
probably because they had already flipped their card, and they knew that the competition knew what they thought the project was worth. And typically, and you can appreciate this, different contractors have different sweet spots as far as the kind of work that they're most competitive on. And I think he knew that some of the other contractors that were receiving it the second time around were probably going to be more competitive, which they were. So it wasn't terribly surprising to us, but it's a tough bidding climate right now. The contractors are super busy, and in this particular case, because these contracts are so old, it also created some challenges to the competition situation. But we're working on getting new ones in place.
Outstanding.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Palermo, second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. And the last item that we have on our agenda for the evening, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to award a task order for the Lake Forest pipe replacement and lining project in an amount not to exceed $166,960.
Okay. So this is the second project on the CIP list for this year, and it's a combination replacement and lining for $166,000, $166,960. Also, this was the bid that we received from Gradeco to do this work, and I guess simply we're here to ask for your approval.
Mayor and council, any discussion or question? Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion. Motion by Councilmember Hall for approval to move this item forward, second by Councilmember Vanstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. That does conclude the agenda. Yes, ma'am?
Two quick things. One related to this. Am I losing my mind? Are these two projects that were submitted through CDBG earlier, or one of them? No? Okay.
No,
Similar.
The CDBG ones are the water line ones.
Okay.
Coming out of the water utility. That was Maxwell and Tuxedo.
Yes, okay.
And those are starting to move through procurement and design.
Perfect. Thank you.
Slower.
And to your point, you said earlier, CIP, which the acronyms can get
Sorry.
confusing, but what everybody would probably be interested in knowing is you are following a plan that you submitted budgetarily, sorry to use that word so poorly, that you submitted and said, here's the plan, and this council made a significant investment using residents' dollars to say, look, let's help catch up some of our projects. And so these are part of the plan as identified in your annual budget, and this is 1 and 2.
Exactly. And next month, we hope to bring to you five lining projects.
Outstanding.
We've bundled them together, and hopefully they'll be ready to come to you in October for award, which will be a large dollar item. Once we take a look at that, we'll have a better sense of where we go next.
Good, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Hills.
Point of order. I would like to request of this body that we alternate monthly the order of these two committee meetings so that we swap out our public safety and public works to go first on occasion, and admin and finance and rec and parks to go second sometimes. But I would love to, if anybody's interested in that.
Now we're gonna let her leave her.
I just wanted to throw that out. I would be in support of alternating.
Somebody clicking their voice or coughing in the background. I don't know, who is that?
It's an exhaust fan.
I'm certainly, if it is the desire of the committees to do so.
I think it can be
Sure.
negotiated out behind the scenes without any formal action from a legislative action. Am I right about this? So I think we can have a conversation about it later if everybody's good with that.
That would be good. That'll be under consideration. All right. If there is nothing else for the evening, we'll entertain a motion of adjournment. Motion by Councilmember Vanstrom, second by Councilmember Morthland. All in favor? Thank you very much. Much accomplished this evening. Thank you.